Joe,
Yes, Greg.
I have an idea.
You've been thinking?
I've been thinking I got a get rich quick scheme.
Yeah, I've been thinking about some stuff. What do you got?
I think that you and I should steal some bonds.
Okay. Um,
Not just any bonds. We should steal some bearer bonds.
okay. I don't really know what those are. Do you?
Well, you know, semantics at this point. I'm not really sure what they are either, but I think they're worth a lot of money.
Well, I've been thinking about some things too, and this is a better option than what I had, so maybe we should go with it.
So we're gonna be pretty rich here. We just gotta figure out what bearer bonds are and how to fence them.
Yeah, let's put our heads together. Welcome into the Prime Cut Podcast, a movie discussion show aimed at recommending deep cuts, flawed gems, and forgotten masterpieces. Greg, exciting day. You're kind of caught up there, buddy.
I didn't plan this very well, Joe.
Today
I'm
we
back.
are talking about Michael Mann's 1995 crime epic, Heat.
He's here. I can feel it.
You search for the scent of your prey, and then you hunt them down. That's the only thing you're committed to.
It keeps me sharp, on the edge, where I gotta be.
You want to be making moves on the street, allow nothing to be in your life that you cannot walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you spot the heat around the corner.
Now, my life's a disaster zone because I spend all my time chasing guys like you around the block.
I do what I do best. I take scores. You do what you do best, trying to stop guys like me.
You've been walking through our life dead.
All I am is what I'm going after.
From The Godfather to Scent of a Woman.
What do we got?
From Raging Bull to Goodfellas.
Assume they got our phones, assume they got our houses, assume they got us.
Their performances have created a legacy of landmark films.
I want full surveillance. That's 24 hours, round the clock. We never close, open 7 days a week.
Now, for the first time, America's two most electrifying actors collide.
With this guy, there's more cheap you should pass. The bank is worth the risk. You should take it down.
12.2 million.
You're up. This crew is good.
It ain't worth the risks you take. Like in risk versus reward, baby.
You're fugitive number one with a bullet.
I'm double the worst trouble you ever had.
If I'm there and I gotta put you away, I won't like it. But I'll tell you, you are going down.
What if you do got me boxed in and I gotta put you down? Because no matter what, you will not get in my way. I will not hesitate for a second.
Al Pacino, Robert Deniro, Val Kilmer in a Michael Mann film. Heat.
It stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Val Kilmer, Wes Studi, Ted Levine. Who am I forgetting? Plenty of people. We're going to talk about a bunch of people.
This is Natalie Portman's second movie.
Natalie Portman in a plot device that I could see. I'm fine with deleting. But let's before we get too far into this, we have a special guest. The Return of the
That's
King.
right. That's right.
The band back together. Paul is with us for Heat. Greg, this thing was getting too hot. We've been talking about Heat for a while. And we've been talking about Paul for a while. And what was Paul going to appear on? And we told him, what do you want to talk about? And he said, I want to talk about Heat. Paul, it's good to have you, buddy.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
It's exciting. I want our audience to know this is probably a minimum of 2 hours that we're going to talk. So set your clocks. I don't know if you got to do chores, maybe it's going to take too long, whatever. But this is not you're not going to be able to go quick. We're not going quickly through Heat. Okay. This is a labor of love.
There's a lot of content on Heat, but there's not this perspective. Everybody has a relationship with it. This is personal.
Beautiful.
You go deep on this stuff.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's right. You can listen to other pods about Heat, but they'll not be like this pod. So,
I consider this probably one of my top 10 favorite movies.
Wow. High praise.
Yeah, it's up there for me. So
it's exciting.
Yeah, and if we had to put this into a category, it's funny because I think that everybody's seen Heat, but there's some people I talk to that still have never seen it. For instance, Mark just watched it recently. And so with that said, I probably call this a forgotten masterpiece.
See, I think that
by some.
Okay. To me, we're breaking our rules here again, 2 weeks in a row. This is not a hidden gem. It's not a deep cut. This is a straight magnum opus. Beethoven's Fifth, the Pieta. This is a masterpiece. Doesn't get better. Paul?
I agree. I think it's a excellent crime drama. And when you say magnum opus, I'm not sure about that. We're going to talk Michael Mann, right?
Yeah, I think it's his best work. We'll talk about it.
There's a difference between best work and favorite.
Okay.
So I think that's an important delineation.
I agree. Look, we got to do some homework, some business. The primecutpodcast@gmail.com is the email address. We love hearing from our rabid audience. Greg, the other day I was walking around my neighborhood, walking the dog, one of the two dogs, and this older lady, nice older gal, was like, "Hey, are you new in town?" I was like, "Yeah, we just moved into the neighborhood." She's like, "Oh, okay. There's this great podcast that I've been listening to, and I'm trying to tell all my friends about it. It's these guys talking about movies, Prime Cut Podcast." And I said, "No way, that's me." So we had a nice little icebreaker there. I don't know about you, Greg, if you've had any public reaction to the Prime Cut Podcast.
Yeah. It's funny. The guys at the gym are finding out about it, and now there's like a bounty where if they tap me out, they get to choose the next movie that we're gonna do.
How come I wasn't consulted for that?
Yeah. Well, it was just it's been an issue, and so I might take up Tai Chi here to avoid some jujitsu here in the future.
Actually, find at Greg's gym. I'll tap him out, and we're gonna do Fast and Furious.
Yeah, that's
collusion.
That's how it's gonna. Yeah, it's gonna have to come to that. You guys are gonna have to collude before we put that movie on the list. TikTok is big right now, Greg, apparently, with the kids.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
So TikTok is where you're going to find all the high points from the videos. You're not going to get the full summary of the podcast, but you'll get clips of it. And then those will get put into the story on Instagram. But TikTok's where you're going to get a lot of the real fun stuff that's happening. And obviously we've got the YouTube as well. If you want to watch, if your preferred medium is to watch us talk about it, then Prime Cut Podcast on YouTube, and you can see our pretty faces.
Yeah, Prime_Cut_podcast on Instagram, YouTube, search Prime Cut Podcast, TikTok, I don't know, I think it's Prime Cut Podcast, whatever. I'll leave that to Greg. Okay, homework's done. Let's get into this movie. We're going to talk about, I guess, 3 leads and the director. We have not covered Michael Mann. Paul, you and I did not cover him directly. And Greg, you and I have not covered him. So we don't have to spend a ton of time on him. I think everyone kind of knows who he is, but we got to talk about him. I think this is his high point. And I also think it's his best movie. I don't know that it's my favorite, but it's close there. There's another one that I like. Maybe.
What would you?
I like Thief.
Yeah, what's your other
better.
favorite?
I think I like Thief better, honestly. And that could be like, I may have seen this too much. I don't know that that's possible. I've seen this movie a lot. So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. It's hard to say that this isn't his best movie, but he doesn't work that much. I mean, like he really doesn't. He didn't do a ton. He takes like 5 years between movies. Paul, thoughts? Michael Mann?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to the verisimilitude in his movies. He writes his own stuff, so he starts from scratch, and that's a process. You can look at Tarantino, and you'll see these writer directors that really write their own content. They tend to take longer between films, and the reason why I love him as a director is because he's really into getting the real life crime aspect into the films. He has consultants that were former criminals or former cops. Like, he launched Dennis Farina's career. So he's somebody that likes to actually, he's like telling a story in the most authentic and real way possible, even though it's fiction. And that's why I think he's one of my favorite directors.
I mean, I feel like he is all parts of these characters, especially in this movie. In the style of how he makes his films and what I know about him, I feel like he is the three leads. He has all elements of those three guys: De Niro's character, Pacino's character, Val Kilmer's character.
Yeah, Michael Mann, good hang? Maybe not.
I don't think
director.
he's a great hang.
Yeah,
great director. But he's
I don't know. He
you're
seems
right. He's
all right
so
in
detailed.
interviews.
Yeah, I think he's like in his early 80s right now. And he's one of those guys that I wish made more stuff, but I also understand why he doesn't because of his process. And I'm okay with it because most of the time I love everything that he does. He doesn't always do crime. I think that's his favorite milieu, but he always seems to hew towards this extreme realism when he does his movies. Like Last of the Mohicans, right? They filmed that in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina, and they built the sets just like they were in the 1700s, like built log cabins. Daniel Day-Lewis was like living off the land, like trapping animals and firing muskets and stuff. Like he's not interested in anything that's not real. For this movie, no soundstage. They're in LA. He did not use a soundstage one time. This is all practical, real life sets and environments, and he wants to capture that as much as possible, which is interesting because sometimes you're like, why don't you just make a documentary? But he doesn't want to do that. He still has a story he wants to tell, but it's like, this has got to be as real as I can make it. These actors are going to fire live rounds in training a lot before we get to set. I'm going to have him interview and work with criminals. I'm going to have him work with detectives. Ashley Judd's character, she plays Val Kilmer's wife. It's not even mentioned that she's a former prostitute in this movie. But in the book, Heat 2, she is. Apparently, when I read some research, I don't know if you read this, Greg, Mann had her go around with former street prostitutes just to like get the vibe for part of her character that was never mentioned in this movie.
I need to interject here because, yes, I saw this research, but what you're saying, Joe, is it can be inferred. It can be inferred a little differently when you say that she went around with these girls. Like, it's not like she was like working side by side. Like, oh, I get you and
have her working.
I don't think it went that far.
Like that. It was like he had her interview these other street workers.
Yeah.
Sex workers.
Yeah.
But not like
the point is, Greg, that's never a thing. They never talk about that. That's never part of her character. But he's like, I want you to have that experience so that you can like see the world through her lens, this character's lens. He's insane.
Right. Yeah. He had De Niro, Pacino, and a couple of the guys go talk to actual prisoners.
Oh yeah.
That had been. And this is actually one of the reasons why Danny Trejo got onto the job, because Danny Trejo had done a stint in Folsom for armed robbery. So he was kind of a little bit of a consultant on this as well.
I'm so happy to see him. He was in this movie.
Doesn't he look so young in this?
His character name's amazing too.
Oh my God. That all right. I'm glad you brought that up. His name in the movie. Again, his name in Danny Trejo's name in the movie. He doesn't have a first name, or maybe this is, I don't know. This is either his first name or his last name, but his name in the movie is just Trejo.
I mean, it works.
Who wasn't there? Trejo.
Yes. When he says that line, I go, wait, was that a blooper? Did I miss that before? And then I had to look up the cast. I was like, no, they just named Danny Trejo in this. I was like, whatever.
Like, what's a better name for a convict?
He's already done it. He's already done the time.
Yeah.
It checks.
So Mann is a technician, I would say. He's an artist, but he's also a technician. Paul, I'm grasping a little bit here. I don't know. What else? Greg, do you have something on Mann?
Yeah. Well, the other thing you said is that they're doing Heat 2. Did we learn nothing from the great Alien movie, which was followed up with Aliens? Like, Heat 2 is not a very strong title. We could have called it Heats. Heats. Just saying, it's better than Heat 2.
I'm writing up an email right now.
I do think it's interesting that he revisited this. He wrote a book, I believe, in 2022. He wrote Heat 2 as a novel, which I read. It's good. And it follows Chris, who is the only surviving character, spoiler alert, of Neil's team. He's the only surviving guy at the end of the movie. It follows him in the 1995 timeline, and then it jumps back to the 80s with both the Pacino character and the De Niro character in Chicago. And I mean, they're casting this. Adam Driver, I believe, is going to be the Hannah, the Al Pacino character. Austin Butler is supposed to be the Val Kilmer character. I don't know who is the De Niro character, but it's interesting that he's returning to this. And again, I think it's one of the things, and we kind of talk about this before, one of the things that Mann does a lot is he has themes and he has plot contrivances and structure that he likes to return to. This whole idea of like a guy with a code, whether that's a good guy or a bad guy, he likes that a lot. Both these two guys, Pacino and De Niro, their characters are very code driven. The whole idea of one last job type of thing, he almost like creates that a little bit. It's reused a lot, but he definitely reuses it over and over. And it's interesting to me because I was thinking about this when I rewatched this movie today. He does not shy away from tropes and cliches, and sometimes they're a little janky, but I do think that he totally gets that this is a cliche of crime.
Yeah, and I don't think he nails his drama all the time, but he definitely goes for it. Like, yes. And I think there's some criticisms you could talk through about Heat where you're like, this gets a little, I don't know if soap opera is the right word, but I think there's some examples. And one of my favorite worst line readings is definitely Ashley Judd like losing her shit with De Niro in the closet. Great. I'm like, oh my gosh. But
I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. You're like,
yeah, right. Take it easy, lady. Take it easy. He's like, let's just keep this together so we get this fucking heist done.
That's what, he's like, I just want to use Chris because he's good.
Correct, and that's the thing to realize. You think he's being a buddy, but he's really like, this is a big payoff for me. Yes, and he knows he's going to be out. But I mean, I have to just talk a couple. Like, so Mann for me, he misses a little bit sometimes. Like, so The Keep, a little bit of a miss. Ali was a little bit of a miss for me. But then, like, he does, like, so, and honestly, Collateral is one of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, Heat's in that top 25 for me, but Collateral, personally, for me, is one of my, like, personal favorites, and it alternates with that and Thief. And I think Thief really parallels Heat in a lot of ways. Like, literally, James Caan says the word heat at the kitchen sink in Thief when he's talking to Tuesday Weld. Where the fuck did this heat come from? You know, and it's Paul, a similar movie.
The themes in Heat are in Thief, so Thief is a 1981. It's Mann's first full-length feature directorial debut. I guess it's his second movie. No, it's his first. It's before The Keep, right? The Keep is 83.
Mm-hmm.
It's James Caan plays like a really skilled diamond burglar who gets kind of mixed up with the mob in Chicago and has to basically tear down this mob and leave. And he leaves. He basically eliminates this mob boss who is muscling him, and the movie ends with him like leaving his life, which is basically what Neil McCauley, Robert De Niro's character, talks about. It's like, don't be afraid to leave. Don't have anything in your life you can't leave in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. That's the whole thing. Now, in Heat, he breaks all those rules. He has this code. We spend the first half of the movie learning about his code, which he then breaks in the second half of the movie, and it's why it ends up killing him. And I think you're right, Paul. For me, if I'm picking Mann movies, it's really tough because I love Last of the Mohicans. I love Thief. I love Collateral. The one that sticks out to me that I keep going back to, and again, maybe this is just because I've like watched the others a ton, is The Insider.
Love it.
I think The Insider is really, really good and completely overlooked. It's not crime. There's no action. There's no shootouts. It's about Russell Crowe plays a real life story about a whistleblower for the tobacco industry, and Al Pacino is the producer of 60 Minutes that's trying to get him on the air to expose this whole big tobacco thing in the 90s. It's incredible. But you're right. I think that Mann excels when he can be technical, when he can have sound design, set design, and production value. That's what he's best at. His drama isn't always great. He does have some good lines, but sometimes it's like, there's some stuff here that's like, all right, a little cheesy.
There are some scenes that really encapsulate him too, because if you think about Collateral, one of the things I love about it is that it actually is Cruise's only villain turn, still to date, I believe.
Yep.
But if you think about the scene in the alleyway, which is one of my favorite scenes in movies, where he has the quick draw with the two kind of like thugs that are robbing him, and like the technical skill that went into that, it wasn't just like they thought that up. Like they researched that, and Cruise, you can imagine, practiced that like crazy. And it's that, and the holster's in the right spot. And I know you know all this technical stuff. I mean, you were a cop, right? But like that, he's very correct with his positioning. We talked about Thief at one point, and where Frank positions himself in the room where he could see all potential threats or whatever, right? And I was like, oh, I didn't even notice that. But Mann noticed it. You picked up on it because you have a background there. But it's his like, that's why his movies are cool, because it's like it does feel a little bit like a documentary, even though it's got that flair of like fiction and drama. To keep you entertained. It's like this is like how would this really go down? And that's why like when you talk about like how do you clean money, like what happens if like you get these diamonds or bonds or whatever, like how do you turn that into money that you can actually spend without getting on radars? And then what do you do to like for a front business? And he goes over that in Thief, and he hits it a little bit in Heat. He goes over the background stuff, all that stuff with like John Voight is fence stuff basically.
Yeah. Greg, there's some, so to Paul's point, one of the things that this movie does, I think really well, and other movies I think start to rip this off. Look, Heat is like one of the most ripped off crime movies of all time. But
Agreed.
One of the things that happens right away in this movie is he puts you in this atmosphere in the world, and he doesn't explain anything. And he's like, nope, you're an adult. You're watching this, you're entertained by this, you're engaged, figure it out. Like, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss stuff. Like literally the first scene when De Niro walks through the hospital and he's got like the ambulance gear on, and he uses the automatic assist.
Yeah.
But he opens it with his elbow, not with his hand.
That's a good catch, right?
So like maybe you just watch this movie and you don't see that, but that's clearly a deliberate thing that he's like, this is how we need to do it. Because this is how a real criminal would do it. He would not use his hand. He would use his arm. He's not going to leave a fingerprint. After the first armored car robbery, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Pacino and his team arrive on the crime scene, and they're just like breaking the crime scene down. There's so much jargon and stuff in that scene that you're like, I'm not totally clear on everything that's happening, but I know what they're talking about kind of, and I'm learning as I go. And this movie lets you learn without spoon feeding it to you like you're an idiot, which I think is awesome.
Unless we're talking about bearer bonds.
Yeah, I still don't know what bearer bonds are. And Paul
It's one
is
of the
going to
most.
break
It's
them
one of
down.
the most. Well, I mean, I don't necessarily know if there's anything to break down really, but it is an interesting like plot point in the movie.
Yeah.
And when you think about Thief, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes long. There's a lot going on to kind of end at where we end. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
there's a lot. All right, let's talk De Niro, Pacino quickly. Everybody knows who these guys are. Greg.
Hey, this is so the big thing with them is that, like we said in the beginning, this movie was billed as De Niro versus Pacino when it came out. Previously, they had been in The Godfather Part 2 together, but they never shared screen time together at all. They were in it, and they were in different timelines in that movie. But people always kind of wanted to see these two in a movie together. And since they did Heat, they've done 4 movies together total. They did this one, they did The Irishman, they did
Righteous Kill.
Righteous Kill, not a good movie. Didn't like that one.
No.
And I think that's it. So The Godfather, Heat, Righteous Kill, and The Irishman. So they've done all those together. But I don't know. What were your thoughts on Righteous Kill?
I was so pumped for it.
Same.
It sucked.
Paul?
it's garbage.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating too, right? Because they did get to a point where it was like they're cashing checks. I mean, Pacino's doing HBO movies, but like they'll still show up in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Pacino's in that, and just like as a cameo, and you're like, man, he's still got the juice, and he's like a very old man at this point, and he's
they're both
honestly,
good in The Irishman.
He's honestly, he's great in The Irishman. I mean, he's channeling something. I'm not sure if it's Hoffa, but it's not exactly Pacino either. And I know he's got some prosthetics on, but to me, I think it was a great performance. I've grown to love that movie. I was a little critical when it came out, but I've watched it like 5 times now. At some point, you have to admit you love it if you're watching it that many times. It's like 4 hours long.
It's a long movie.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Well, I think the thing to mention here is these are 2 guys in the 70s who were like part of the new wave of Hollywood. They're both Italian-American actors, dramatic roles. They spend time in kind of the crime world of like mobsters because of their ethnic backgrounds. They both work with Brian De Palma. Pacino never really works with Scorsese until later in his career with The Irishman, but they're kind of on these like same trajectory. And it's almost like they're 2 heavyweight boxers, like, when are they going to meet? And that's kind of what happened here.
Well, and it's like Greg, I remember, I don't know, I was like 13 at the time. I remember how big of a deal it was, Greg, when it was Pacino and De Niro. Like that was a big deal, like in the culture. And I know movies were a bigger deal at the time, but it was like, having those 2 dudes in the same movie was like a cultural like thing. And I don't know what your guys' first experience was with Heat. I was going to ask you. I remember having the like box DVD with the little clip open. Do you remember that?
Okay.
Yeah. Is that just me? Okay.
No.
That's how I had it for years.
I've got a quick first Heat experience.
Yeah.
Okay? You ready for this? I did not see this in theaters, but I was very much like you. Because I was already into movies at this time. I'd already seen like The Deer Hunter and The Godfather. I knew who both these guys were. I'd seen a lot of these movies. Very invested in Pacino, De Niro. I liked Michael Mann. And when the movie came out, I remember asking my dad, "Can we rent this movie? I want to watch this movie." He was like, "Yeah, let's rent it. It sounds great." He and my childhood friend, Patrick O'Neill, who I don't think listens to this podcast, but shout out to Patrick O'Neill. We rented Heat in my basement. We were down there with my dad. We put it in. Somebody put it in. Okay. Now, keep in mind, at the time, it was 2 VHS tapes. This was on VHS. The movie starts, and it starts right at the scene where De Niro has just had coffee with Pacino. And Pacino comes back to the squad center, and he's like, they dropped all our surveillance. He's like, what do you mean? I had coffee with him half an hour ago. That whole thing. We watched that, and we're like, okay, no credits. This is interesting. Like, wonder what he's doing here. We're just, whoa, this robbery is happening right away. We get to the end of the movie, and we're like, wait a minute. Why is there another tape?
You watched the movie from like the halfway point to the end the first time?
Yeah.
Dude, that's right. It was a double-decker.
Yeah. And my dad was like, boys, do not tell your mother that we watched this reunion. She is going to make a lot of fun of us. Don't tell anybody. So we didn't. I mean, people know, like my family laughs about it now. But yeah, we watched it. We were like, oh, no credits? Wow, Michael Mann just like going for it. They're not even going to talk about who's in this movie. They're just starting it. So yeah.
That's funny.
I still love this movie, even though I watched it out of order.
My brother's the one that put me onto this. I somehow must have, I don't know what I was doing in the summer this came out, but my brother's the one that put me onto this, and I saw it after it came out of theaters. And he collected a lot of gangster movies, mob movies, and so he's the one that put me onto Goodfellas, Bronx Tale, Casino, all that stuff. And he's the one that gave me Heat. And I probably saw it way after it came out, and I was like, "How did I miss this?
Yeah,
this is amazing." It was one of those moments when when you're watching one of your favorite movies and you realize part of the way through that you're watching your favorite movie. You're like, this is so good. Yeah. I had that experience with this.
De Niro had Casino and this movie in the same year. Pretty ridiculous.
That's just wild. And then Val Kilmer had
Batman Forever in this. Yeah. So
Casino's an amazing movie, but it's also a great background movie. I just watched it again, like, I don't know, within the last month. Like I was working on something, and it's just like a good vibe movie. I don't know if that says something, but
it's got great music.
Man. Yeah,
a lot of scenes. It moves a lot. Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
I think that the end scene in Casino where they play House of the Rising Sun is one of the best montages in all of cinema. Yeah. I love it so much.
It's really good. Mark, you just watched this. Did you watch it for this pod?
I watched it for the pod.
Awesome.
I grew up a little after, so I've caught up on most of these movies that were out in the 90s. But Heat, for some reason, always slipped up for me. I don't know if it was maybe the long, it's a 3-hour movie. I haven't even seen The Irishman.
It's all right. It's good.
I'll say it.
It's I think Paul likes it more than I do. Irishman is a very long movie, but I think it came out right around the time of COVID when it was lockdown, and so I think everyone had a little more time, if I'm not mistaken.
I got to this point with it where I started like Wikipedia-ing each of the guys that stops, and it frames and it says died, boom, car bomb, boom, and I was like, I started going down that rabbit hole, and somehow they got me more personally invested in it because it's all real. It's all like real dudes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you'll like Google it, and there'll be news articles from this mobster getting nail bombed on his porch, like one of the guys getting in the movie. So I don't know.
It's crazy. It's good. I think it's an acquired taste, and I think it improves with viewings, but it's also long.
That's well said. It's an acquired taste. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say though, Mann does like a really good job at focusing on the main characters. This cast, so the cast is huge. So many noticeable faces from my experience watching it. Seeing Natalie Portman. There's the sergeant from Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious been mentioned twice in this podcast. Sorry about it. There's the sergeant in the first one who's always talking to Paul Walker's character. He's in there, which I had no clue. Is the guy from Allstate?
The Allstate dude is in this.
Yeah.
Dude, put Dennis Haysbert, baby. He's the man.
From Navy SEALs.
Yeah, Navy SEALs.
Mann does such a good job at creating this world around Pacino, Kilmer, and De Niro that, I wasn't lost. I didn't feel like it was too much, because you're always worried. I think a lot of movies and a lot of executives are worried, oh, we're going to build too many people. Not with this one. They went ahead and built everyone. I guess they weren't as successful at that point, like Natalie Portman's second movie. The Allstate guy wasn't the Allstate guy. But I loved it, man. I think Mann has such a good grasp on keeping your attention. This didn't feel like 3 hours. There have been movies that feel like they're super long. This one did not.
I agree.
And the color scheme, the sound. There's a scene in this movie that I'm sure we'll talk about when De Niro finally meets Edie, and it's loud, dude. It's like you walked into the busiest restaurant in New York, and there's clinking and clattering, people chattering, and then like they talk, and it quiets down, I was like, oh man, it's so good, dude. He focuses on the littlest.
He's a master.
parts.
He's a
He's
master.
a technical genius, man. He really is. Mark, I'm so glad
It
you
was
liked it. If you didn't like it, we'd be like, I mean, I don't even think it crossed our minds that someone who watches and be like, it wasn't that good. Like, what are you talking about?
And Mark mentioned something, and I was like, it reminded me, like, this movie has the real good. I don't know how many have done as good of a job of showing both the cop side and the robber side. Like,
That's a good point.
and so clearly, and like you're on both, kind of rooting for both a little bit. And I don't know who you guys are rooting for in the end. I think that's something we could talk about. But like, it's really cool how they get both sides of it and mix them in.
It's confusing because it's like, wait, is this a De Niro movie or is this a Pacino movie? Whose side am I on here? Is this a good guy movie or a bad guy movie? And you don't know until the very, very end.
Yeah. We got to talk about that because I know whose side I'm on and who I think wins the movie or who's like has the better role, which I want to talk about. But let's touch Val Kilmer really quick. It's not so he plays like the second lead of the gangster side, the bank robber side.
Tom
Not the
Sizemore
first
may
choice.
feel different. Tom Sizemore might.
Sizemore.
I'm joking.
Sizemore.
He might really feel different though in real life.
But the thing is, Paul, you know what? It's great that you brought that up because the more I watch this, the more Kilmer stands out to me. But Sizemore has some like ridiculous scenes that are like great. When De Niro smashes Waingro's head on the countertop and then like smashes him into the window and that guy looks up and Tom Sizemore like looks over. That's like one of the best scenes in the movie.
He hardly has any.
He has he has action is the juice, which is like ridiculous, Mark. For me, the action is the juice is like maybe the line of this movie. But you're right. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have the. He's the least likable of anyone in the movie. I think he's the biggest piece of shit, total scumbag. But he's like, it's interesting how they kind of, to me, they break down the gang into like archetypes, really, which I guess we're gonna get to. But
Waingro might be worse.
Yeah, I think Waingro's way worse.
See, we were talking about Waingro. You're
like
right.
Using a kid as a human shield's like rookie shit compared to what Waingro was doing.
Very true. God, yeah. I completely forgot about him. Val Kilmer was not the first. He was not initially cast. Keanu Reeves turned this down, which is unbelievable.
Along with Johnny Depp.
Yeah, Johnny Depp did too. To be honest with you, I think Keanu would have been okay, but I think that Val is great.
Don't forget about Brad Pitt was potentially considered for it along with Jean Reno.
Oh shit, he would have
Really?
been good. I didn't know that. For what?
Yeah, they were all.
What role?
They were all in the running.
The Kilmer role?
For Kilmer's role.
Oh,
Yeah, that was. I did read that was the role that was like super up for grabs.
So it's funny that Kilmer actually didn't make much money off of this. Because he was doing Batman and he was getting a huge paycheck for that. And part of the negotiation was that instead of money, he asked if he could be put on the cover of the movie poster between Pacino and De Niro.
Genius.
And so Michael Mann obliged, and so that's what the movie poster looks like.
Smart.
With him smack in the middle of them.
I didn't
holding
know
a gun.
that's
It's great.
smart.
I think this is my second.
It's a great movie poster.
This is my second favorite Kilmer performance.
After
Willow.
Tombstone.
Willow.
What?
Willow all day.
Oh, Mad Mardigan.
Mad Mardigan, dude. Top 5 coolest characters. Maybe not top 5. Maybe top 10.
He's great in that. Hey, some other people that were considered for the roles of Pacino and De Niro were Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson.
No.
And then that would have been a completely different movie.
Yeah.
And then Nick Nolte and Don Johnson.
That's a TV movie.
Or kind of awesome. I'd watch either version, to be honest. Like, let's run it back twice. Let's do it now. I don't give a shit. Anyways,
I mean, they did do it twice though.
Yeah,
because it was a made-for-TV movie, LA Takedown. And have you ever seen this movie?
Yeah, I've watched it on YouTube.
Yeah,
Paul, you watch it?
There's like
I've watched part of it.
Yeah, they've got like the same scenes in it and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting because
Xander Berkeley's
yeah, Ralph, the guy who plays Ralph. Remember who's banging
Diane
Pacino's
Menor.
wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot take you can't watch my.
Are you talking about Mo from The Simpsons.
Is that who it is? I didn't know that. Wow.
That's the voice actor of Mo from The Simpsons.
Xander Berkeley is?
That's crazy. Wow. Well, he was actually Wayne
pretty
Bro
sure.
in LA Takedown.
Oh, wow.
That's real
I
quick.
didn't remember that.
That's one of my favorite lines, Paul. Oh, yeah, I made you fuck Ralph because it makes me feel good.
I didn't have that.
No,
but it's great.
I'm sorry. It wasn't Xander Berkeley. Who was the guy that was fucking Val Kilmer's wife?
Oh, Hank Azaria. Yeah.
Hank Azaria. Yeah, it is.
That's Mo from The Simpsons.
Yeah, he's good. All right, I think we've done our leads, and I can tell we're like chomping at the bit here to get into this. The movie.
We got to talk about this real quick before we get into the actual movie.
Okay.
So this movie is all about armed robberies, and it inspired multiple other movies. It inspired the beginning of The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger and that whole bank robbery scene. They used the same bank manager in both movies. It was inspired, obviously, by that. And then, obviously, The Town with Ben Affleck.
There's a scene in The Town.
So many.
Okay, so when he comes back from, do you know The Town well? You guys know The Town pretty well?
Yeah.
Paul, I know you know The Town.
Yeah.
All right. When he comes back from, he's eating lunch with Claire, who the witness that he's supposed to be like intimidating, and Jeremy Renner's character shows up and was like, "Oh, you're having lunch with the witnesses now." And they're like in the apartment afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Renner is watching Heat in that scene on TV.
Oh, that's a cool catch.
Yeah. So like the town owes everything to Heat.
Right. And I mean, I'm a fan of any movie, and I know Mark feels the same way, of any movie with Ben Affleck doing a Boston accent.
Love a bat flick.
The bat flick. Yeah.
I mean, Den of Thieves is basically a sea-level Heat, which I like. I like that movie. But it's
not going.
I mean, it's B level. Like, chill out, dude.
Gerard Butler, Jesus,
he's great in it, man. I love him. Big Dick Nick.
Big Dick. 50 Cent is in it. Plays a pivotal role. I don't know, guys. Anyway,
Vince is good in that, man.
He's all right.
You need to relax. Take it easy on the. Take it easy on things. It's not that bad.
The best actor in that movie is Pablo.
Right.
He's good.
So this movie inspired two big bank heists that I can think of. First off, and we'll talk briefly about this one, is the North Hollywood shootout.
Yep.
Which, for anyone that's not familiar, two guys, basically lifelong criminals, armored themselves up like chest to feet with armor, and they went into a bank with fully automatic weapons in North Hollywood, and they robbed it, and the cops couldn't do anything to them. They were shooting at them, but here's the deal: that the cops only had pistols and shotguns, and so they didn't have anything that could pierce through the armor in that situation. And I believe the bank robbers spent like over 1,200 rounds of ammo and just shooting their way out of this. But the other thing is that before this happened, which was in 1997, I believe, police officers didn't have anything other than that. After the North Hollywood shootout, police officers were equipped in LA with M16s.
That's right.
Because of that type of situation, so they could handle that. So Heat takes place in 1995, and in one of the big shootouts at the end, the cops are running around with assault rifles. Wouldn't have been a thing. That part would not have been technically correct, just because the police in LA did not have that at the time.
Yeah, only SWAT did.
Yeah, and those guys, they before they were the North Hollywood shootout, and it's actually a tourist attraction now. You can actually see the armor that they were wearing and stuff. They were both killed on site. The thing that they ran into is that when all the gunfire was going down, the big flaw that most people don't think about is their guns got shot and then they malfunctioned, and so they no longer had their fully automatic rifles. But before that, they were called like the high heist robbers, and they had stolen money from like 2 or 3 banks before, over $1 million each. And it's like, at what point, like, how much is enough, man? Like, when do you stop?
Yeah,
I guess
when it's your lifestyle,
the
really
action
never.
is
Maybe
the
it's like a
juice.
death
Action's the
wish
juice.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, action's
Action
the juice,
is the
man.
juice. Yeah.
Never
So
know.
so that one is there's that, and then the largest monetary heist that's ever happened. This one is, oh man, I got a lot to say about this. Lee Murray of the UFC. And Joe, you're familiar with this. Lightning Lee Murray. He was an MMA fighter, and the short of it is that he robbed a Securitas facility in England, and he stole the largest amount of money. It's this Lee Murray's whole life story needs to be a movie. There's a 4-part documentary series on Amazon called Catching Lightning. Absolutely worth watching if you're into MMA. But basically, Lee Murray's like the abridged version here is he was an MMA fighter. He made his way into the UFC, and after he made his way into the UFC, they were gearing up to turn him into the next Conor McGregor because they wanted to break into the European market. And so they were like, Lee Murray's our guy. Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell were basically the biggest names in the UFC at the time. And so they brought the UFC over to London, and Lee Murray wasn't fighting on that card, but afterwards they all went out to a big party. And before they went out to the party, someone tried to introduce Tito Ortiz to Lee Murray, and Lee Murray basically got snubbed by Tito. Tito was like, yeah, whatever. And like walked off. And so instantly Lee Murray was like, fuck that guy.
But Tito's the light heavyweight champion at the time.
Yeah, Tito was light heavyweight champ at the time. I mean, he was on top of the world. Like Tito Ortiz was tearing through everybody. This is long before his down streak of just fighting Ken Shamrock over and over.
And Lee Murray's a middleweight in Cage Warriors, like a small UK like fighting organization. Anyway, go ahead.
He fought his last fight in Cage Warriors was against Anderson Silva.
Yep.
And Anderson Silva was like, this is Lee Murray's sole loss. And he went to a decision with Anderson Silva. After that, Anderson Silva like put everybody away for years. So that just shows you what status Lee Murray was on whenever this this fight happened, since he was able to hang toe to toe with Anderson Silva. Anyways, this is my favorite part of the story. Joe, you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Where they're at the nightclub? Yeah, go for it.
Well, yeah. This group of Pat Miletich, who's a UFC fighter, Jeremy Horn, he trained a bunch of guys. Tito and Chuck are at this nightclub because they're there for like UFC in London. Lee Murray's there, and they are all, there's like a disruption inside the bar, and they're throwing people out. They're like, everybody's out. Everybody needs to get out of the bar. And so they kind of push people out into the street, and a fight starts. And of course, these pro fighters at the time are interested in fighting, so they're all kind of fighting. And
it's like it's a alley brawl.
Yeah, and this
with
is
MMA fighters in the UFC.
And like Chuck Liddell has done interviews where he's like, yeah, I was like punching people in this alley, my back against the brick wall, like swinging on guys. And Lee Murray sees Tito and runs over and hits him 5 times and knocks him out in the street.
Knocked out Tito Ortiz. Cold. Yeah. The Chuck Liddell apparently had like 4 or 5 dudes around him because Chuck Liddell was just dropping bodies. Anyone that would come close to him, he would just cold cock and knock everybody out.
Did he like catch him by surprise, or was it just like
Tito took his coat off? Tito took
so
his
it was like
off.
they squared up on each other, and that was the end of it. Okay.
Yes.
So Tito Ortiz rushes him, and Lee Murray's backing up backwards, taking off his jacket, dodging punches at the same time. He finally gets his jacket off and then just lights up Tito.
Yeah.
Hits him with every shot. And this is according to Pat Miletich. Okay, this became MMA folklore for a long time, where people were like, because Lee Murray did this bank heist, he fled the country. He got he's in prison now. He's still in prison. But for the longest time, nobody had heard Lee Murray's version of the story. Everyone had heard Pat Miletich's version, Chuck Liddell. Tito Ortiz had been asked about it on some different news programs at the time. They're like, hey, we got to ask about this street fight that happened out in London. And Tito was like, nah, that's not what happened. Like I threw a knee and we slipped and we both fell down and that was it. There was nothing happened. So Tito Ortiz, like, it's well known that he didn't tell the truth. here's where it gets real interesting. In the early 2000s, there was a message board called the Underground. It eventually changed to MMA TV. And in the early days of MMA and jiu-jitsu, everybody posted there. When I say everybody, it's not just fans. Jiu-jitsu was like an early thing at the time. MMA wasn't nearly as mainstream. And Tito Ortiz would post there. Joe Rogan would post there. Hoist Gracie would post there. Everybody had a message board name on there, and there's like some famous names on there. And so people would ask Tito Ortiz about it, and he said no. Anyways, someone was able to do an interview with Lee Murray. Lee Murray apparently had a cell phone that he had hidden in his cell there in the prison that he was in. And they did a text interview with him, and the whole transcript was posted on there. And it was verified through, I believe, Lee Murray's wife as well. That was really him. And Lee Murray, his rebuttal finally came out, and it was like, Tito Ortiz says that he slipped when I punched him because he was wearing dress shoes. It's like I was wearing wrestling shoes. I was wearing dress shoes too. I knocked him out. That's what happened.
Yeah. So that guy went on to commit the largest armed robbery in the history of the United Kingdom, which is insane.
It's crazy. His whole life is crazy.
Yeah.
UFC fighter knocks out Tito Ortiz in a street fight, largest armed robbery, and it was inspired by, it was very, when you see pictures of it, you're like, yo, they look like the dudes in Heat. They're wearing like the same type of masks and everything.
Yeah, it was nuts.
And the dude's only 46, which makes me feel old as fuck. Seriously, dude. Oh,
what have you done with your life?
Okay. We talked around it. Should we just get into this movie, Greg?
Yeah. So I think that's the gist of where we're at. So yeah, let's jump into the movie, and we've got some more stuff to throw in here as well.
Yeah, I mean, this movie starts with so let's just. I say we can just do the basic plot. I'm going to run through the basic plot, and then we can talk about the big scenes. The basic plot is. Robert De Niro plays Neil McCauley, who is a very technical bank robber. He's just a thief overall, which I think is interesting that they show him and his crew committing a variety of crimes as opposed to just like takeover style bank robberies. They do different kinds of crimes in this movie, and he has a team that consists of several different character actors. Tom Sizemore is one. Val Kilmer. We have Danny Trejo. Who else? Sizemore, Kilmer, Trejo. That's really it.
Yeah, it's a crew of 4, really. It's a core crew. And then they have Waingro. Yeah.
And Wayne, they add, okay, exactly. So they come across this guy. They need another guy. They add Waingro to their team for one incident, and we are mirrored by Al Pacino's character Vincent Hanna, who runs a robbery homicide division group of detectives. They do very violent crimes. I think I need to talk about RHD and SIS real quick.
Yeah, can you explain what kind of cop he is? Because I was like, okay, go ahead.
I'll do that after I do this real quick. Basically, they clash because De Niro's crew ends up robbing an armored car. They commit a high-line burglary that ends up getting foiled, and then they have a dramatic shootout of a takeover-style bank robbery. Hannah ends up he's investigating, surveilling this team. His team chases them down, eliminates them one at a time, and we get to the end of the movie where De Niro is killed by Vincent Hanna, his character. And we're going to talk about a bunch of scenes in the movie, but that's the basic. We basically have these two groups, cops, criminals. They're facing off. They're trying to the criminals are trying to commit crimes. The cops are trying to catch them. That's basically it. It's one more job. I want to leave. De Niro's like, I'm trying to get out of here. So let's talk about the LAPD really quick. So there's a really good book called Homicide Special that breaks down a lot of this. The way the LAPD works is they have divisions. So they have like the Western Division, the Southern Division, South Central, all that stuff. Within those divisions is like a patrol unit, That's the guys in uniform. And then you have a detective unit, and you have different detective units within that division. So you'll have narcotics, vice, sex crimes, homicide, robbery, whatever. If to be a detective, you have to take a test. You take this test, and then you are now in a division as a detective, and you may be slotted into one of those different groups of detectives. Maybe you're a narcotics detective. To go to the next level is robbery homicide. Robbery homicide is basically like the A team of detectives. Those are great investigators. They've been really good investigators at that division level, because robbery homicide takes really high profile, elite, violent, just like high profile crimes. So there's that one scene at the beginning where Pacino, when they're talking at the crime scene, that one guy, the guy who plays Beansy in Sopranos, is like, hey, Lieutenant, are you guys going to take this, or is this staying at division? He goes, no, we're taking this. Robbery homicide is taking this. They can basically come in and pick a crime and say, we are going to investigate this because maybe it fits with other stuff that we're doing in robbery homicide. So you have your division level, you have your detectives that are above the divisions, then you have robbery homicide that's above those. And you have to be a division detective to get to robbery homicide. So like his team is like really good detectives.
And he's an elite. He's like a Marine in his background. I know they have a whole background right up on him, but like,
yeah,
this is like the elitist crew, right?
Elite of the elite. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they also talk about SIS. So SIS is another division of robbery homicide. That's the special investigation section. Those guys are almost all surveillance. So what they're doing is they're like watching people, they're following them, they're bugging them. That's so like if you have a search warrant and you're like, we're going to follow these guys, that's SIS does all that. So one time he's like, get SIS out here. We need it. That's what they're doing. He's like calling another group, and all they do is surveillance work. They also get into a ton of shootings, very controversial because they're like following bad guys all the time. But yeah.
And they're in like street clothes. Well, yeah, They're in street clothes basically.
Yep.
So it's kind of like they're like vice cops too. I don't know. It was kind of kludgy. I'm glad you explained it, because I was just like, why would these dudes be robbery? I guess they killed people, but it's more like a robbery. But robbery homicide makes sense.
Yeah, because that's interesting because most other smaller cities, because LAPD is so big, they combine robbery and homicide because they see a robbery means a robbery versus a burglary. A robbery means there is force and violence involved in the crime. So they're either committing a violent act to rob somebody, like I punch somebody in the face and take their purse, that's a robbery. Or I go into a bank with a gun, that's a violent crime because I'm using a firearm. A burglary is a breaking in to a building that is not occupied. So when people are like, oh, my house got burglarized, that means that you weren't home. If your house was robbed, that means you were home and they came in with guns and did a takeover of your house. So a lot of times, because there's violence involved in robberies, LAPD is like, robbery, homicide, we're going to put them together, and they're going to be, like the highest profile cases that we need to take.
Thief is like the burglary version. Heat is the robbery version.
Exactly. That's right. That's exactly right. So the first scene we got to talk about is the armored car. We get Wayne Grove.
It jumps right into it. Hey,
Right
there's this funny thing, like we talked about earlier, that Michael Mann just jumps right into the movie and says like, "Hey, you're along for the ride. We're doing this. Figure it out." There's this funny scene that it always sticks with me, and I can't picture like, why was this necessary? But they show Wayne Grove's introduction, and he tries to order like a cup of coffee or something at the stand, and he leaves because Tom Sizemore's character shows up to pick him up, and he doesn't even like get his coffee. Like for some reason that scene always like stuck with me as like odd.
I love that scene, Greg. I'm so glad you talked about it. I love when his bullets flying in the wind as he's walking out towards to give his coffee. Then he gives him the coffee, and he's such a dick, and right off the bat, he just walks off and doesn't even worry about letting the guy know about the coffee. Just like tells you about his character
slaps
too.
The cup. Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh,
because he like reaches into the window and he cracks the cup on the counter, like, "Hey, fill me up."
And like he's being annoying, obnoxious about it.
That's what I took.
And then he leaves and walks off when the guy comes. So
he doesn't even get it.
Filled up the coffee for him, and then he just walked off.
All right, that makes so much more sense. I'm glad you guys clarified that. He gets in the big tow truck, the big rig or whatever that they're using, that Tom Sizemore is driving. He's just like yapping his ear off, and Tom Sizemore, he doesn't have many lines in this movie, but man, when he speaks, it's good. He goes, "Hey, stop talking, okay, Slick."
Well, this is where we learn that Waingro is not a regular member, because he's like,
Right.
"Hey, I'd consider going again," and it's like obviously they needed a fill-in, somebody off the bench, and they got a hold of this guy. They don't know him, and he's obviously irritating Sizemore right away because like, we're about to do this robbery, man. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
And then
I'm trying to focus here.
Yeah, and then you get the actual robbery, which again, Mann is like all practical. He runs an 18-wheeler into an armored car. I mean,
there's a cool detail here.
Lay it on me. This scene blows me away.
Do you know the name of the actor that plays Waingro?
No.
Is it Kevin Gage or something?
Yeah, Kevin
Gage. Kevin Gage. Did you see the name of the armored car?
No.
The name of the armored car is Gauged Armored Express.
No way. Wow.
It's just a little Easter
stuff.
egg in there.
Yeah. So these guys.
He also had a famous marriage. I'll look it up.
Did he?
He did
time. He did time after Heat.
He was married to Kelly Preston before John Travolta.
Wow. Yeah. Rest in peace.
Joe.
She's no longer with us.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
You mentioned that he does Heat, and apparently when he was in prison, all the inmates just called him Waingro.
Yeah, he had like instant cred on the yard. It was like, Waingro.
Because he did the movie.
He's like, that's not my name.
I would grow that hair out and just embrace it.
Hell yeah.
That's tough.
Well, this is where we get the hockey masks. They all have hockey masks. Again, super tactical. They all have assault rifles with like chest rigs with extra magazines. They're in jumpsuits. This is where I think you get the breakdown, the archetypes of the team. So De Niro's in charge. He's running the clock. He's like calling out the time. He's running the team.
Yes.
I think that Sizemore is kind of like muscle. He's yelling at the guys, pulling them out. And that's kind of de facto what Waingro is, just like helping him on the side. But to me, the most important guy is Kilmer. His character is like,
right.
He puts the shape charge on, because we already see earlier Val Kilmer has bought these special explosives. He puts a shape charge on the door. It blows the door off, and then the scene when it blows all the back windows out of the car in the car lot is
cool.
Like so fucking cool. He also is a guy who is pulling the money out. Like he's going through everything. So like, and that's the same way in the bank. When we get the bank robbery later, it kind of breaks out the same way. De Niro's in charge. Sizemore is like keeping everybody under control.
It's like muscle.
The technical guy is Kilmer. So they end up robbing. They take these bearer bonds, and they're calling out the time. And Waingro obviously just is a psychopath, because he keeps telling one of the guards like, "Hey, stand back." And this is where Sizemore's like, "Hey, see the blood coming out of their ears? They can't hear you." And Waingro flips out and shoots one of the guards, like executes him right away, which means they're all now going to be wrapped up in a murder charge on top of the robbery, which is why Sizemore looks over at De Niro, and De Niro nods. And he's like, "You just got to kill the rest of the guys. Why have a witness here? Because we're all going to be charged with murder now anyway."
Which is brutal, because there's this guard and he's got blood streaming out of his ears, and he's like kind of stumbling forward, and he's like looking back at the guy that just got shot. And I don't know if it's Sizemore or if it's Kilmer, but they look back at De Niro and he nods like that, and it's so cold.
Yep.
And they just do the Mozambique drill. Just two in the chest and one in the head, which is a classic Mann thing too. Which again is a very good attention to detail on actual like assassination techniques, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And so now we get the getaway. The team gets away, and we get the intro to Pacino's character, Vincent Hanna, and his team of detectives. They come to the crime scene. This is maybe non-shootout my favorite scene.
It's cool.
It's so
Pacino
good.
shows up on the scene, and he basically instantly takes charge. He starts telling everybody what to do. He's telling them, like, he's dissecting the scene. He's telling them, like, this is a perfect spot for a robbery. You've got freeway exits here and here, two different directions, both a quarter of a mile away. He's like, check the cameras. They're probably disabled. And he's basically just you see how efficient and proficient he is at this job that he's at, and it's totally the equivalent to De Niro's role. He's extremely proficient at what he's doing. He's on top of it. He's meticulous, and they're both like the exact same thing. We get a lot of that through the whole movie, where we get the version of how they're exactly the same but very different on the opposite sides of the law. So Pacino is basically the head detective. He says, like what Joe was saying earlier, we're gonna take over this job, and then we get the scene where it cuts to them at the diner with Waingro, and they're waiting for De Niro to show up.
Yeah, this is great.
This is where it starts to get lit because, it's like the thing that he captures so well. We've talked about, man. Like, first of all, there's a really cool, and it starts right off the bat, and it's even on the DVD. It's just like the blue. I don't know, Joe. You used the word palette to describe it. Like he's got this like gray blue palette that kind of. It's not in every scene, but there's like trinkets of it in like every little part of the movie. And so, shit, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, it's funny. I'm glad that you brought it up because when I started watching this again, I instantly like paused it. I go, wait, is there something wrong with my TV? And I started trying to mess with the settings. I was like, oh, wait, this is how Michael Mann films this.
Oh, no, it was like the diner scene. Yeah.
Yeah. And we get to the diner scene here where they're, Waingro's just like eating away and no one else is really eating. They're all just kind of sitting there waiting,
and it's
watching
pie,
him.
Which like says something too,
What does that say, Paul?
He's a fucking glutton. Like, fuck this guy. Like I'm so out on Waingro.
You get
not only does he kill people unnecessarily, he eats pie afterwards.
But like the way he shoots the diner is so cool looking. I don't know how to even describe it. And like all of them are chock full of people too. Like I don't know what he was paying extras, but yeah, it's really cool.
Scene. It's an incredible scene because I like when as before De Niro shows up, Sizemore gets up and sits at the bar facing the table. And then De Niro comes in and sits down, and then Sizemore returns to the table, which I didn't understand why he did that. I don't know why he did that because he sits in the same seat.
They were switching positions because originally I believe it was.
Oh, you're right. Sizemore was sitting next to
Trejo was sitting.
So De Niro could sit next to him.
Yes.
So De Niro could sit right next to him so he could talk to him.
Yeah.
And as soon as he sits down, he's like, "Sorry, man, I had to make a move.
I had to get it on."
He was going for his gun or whatever.
Yeah.
I had to get it on.
Yeah.
And that's when you get the space smash.
Yeah, De Niro smashes his face on the table and then against the table or against the window. And then you get the people behind him looking over at him.
That guy's great.
What just happened there?
That dude who with the huge aviator glasses who looks up and then that's
Yeah, he looks over at him and he basically stares him down like, what's going on over there? And that's when you get Tom Sizemore tilt his head to the side, just stare right back at him. Yeah, it does the lean, mind your business.
Mind your business. That's right. And so he's like, "Hey, we broke out your cut, and we're cutting loose. You're not on the team anymore, basically." And they leave.
Let's get this guy paid and cut him loose. Get him the fuck out of here.
Yeah. So they go to leave, and that's when you get the almost execution because De Niro punches him. They drag him over. Trejo pops the trunk, and it's plastic lined with garbage bags. And you're like, "Oh, that's dead body time." But
yeah, cool detail.
Good detail.
They didn't need to do that.
Nope.
No,
the man is not going to not do that, dude. He's of course going to have.
There's one dude on a lookout. There's one dude that's on the trunk, and there's one dude that's actually doing it. And the thing that breaks the whole thing up is dumb luck. Like a cop car comes by, and it's like how believable. One of my biggest critiques was always how the hell does Waingro get away right there? But then you watch it again and again, and De Niro takes 3 or 4 steps, to kind of look towards the cop, and they come back, and Waingro's just gone.
Disappeared, yeah.
Yeah.
Should have put a knee on him belly there.
Yeah.
Pinned him down.
Well, so now he's in the wind, but we're like, okay, whatever, he's gone. And this is where you kind of get. Well, this is do you want to talk about the?
We get Val
family
Kilmer.
stuff?
Yeah, we got Val Kilmer and his wife.
All right, yeah,
and this is the scene where he goes home and like he basically just robbed, I don't know however much, like $1 million worth of bearer bonds, and he gives his wife like $8K. Is that what he does? And she's like, "Where's the rest?" He's like, "It's coming. Come on, let's go to dinner."
Yeah, no, he's like, I had to square the bookies, which is like 95% of his take home.
So he owed a bunch of money.
He mentions it to De Niro later. He's like, I had a rough Super Bowl and something else, but he's like a gambling junkie. Yeah, he's a gambling junkie.
Yeah. But his wife's played by a young Ashley Judd, very striking. She's very good in this. Not a ton of screen time, but she's great. And they have like an argument. He leaves, whatever. And then we get the cut to. We also get some background on Pacino's character. He's married. He's married to an artist, I guess, who has a teenage daughter played by Natalie Portman. They seem to have a contentious, somewhat. He and his wife have a rocky relationship, I would say, mainly based on the fact that his work seems to take over his life and their relationship, which I would argue is kind of, how does she not know that? But beforehand, but okay.
She married a detective.
I told you when you hooked up with me, baby.
Why does he say it like
I don't know, man.
It's so good, man.
There's a when they're going to all the families, there's a shot in this movie that blew my mind. It's a still shot, it's a still frame, and all you see is someone put a gun down on an end table, and then you see him put his keys down on the end table.
Yeah.
And he slowly walks up, and it's very blue, it's very dark, and then you kind of see like the silhouette. It's De Niro, and you immediately get this vibe that this is a man who probably doesn't have any family. He's just openly leaving a gun out on an end table, and he goes and ponders out his he has like this beautiful like stained glass, or just not stained, just glass window overlooking the ocean. That scene alone, and it slowly pans up to him and then it pans out to the ocean, was one of the most beautiful scenes I've in that movie, I think, personally, because it explains so much in so little. And it also, I think it's like y'all been saying this whole time, it's Mann's staple, where he just loves blue. And it looks so badass. I had to point it out. I was like, man, that was cool, dude. I want that. That's hard. We talk about things being hard and tough on this podcast. That scene is hard. And there are guns in this shootouts.
Hey, that moment right there, Mark, that you're talking about is actually inspired by a painting.
Really?
What painting?
Yeah. I forgot the name of it, but there's a painting that's inspired by, and they basically wanted to recreate that shot in the movie. And the painting is there's a gun on a table with a guy standing at the window looking at the ocean out his house.
What?
I need that painting. That was tough.
Yeah,
and everything feels so big too. Like I don't know how he does it. Like the shootout, obviously, we'll get to that. It feels huge, and the sound of the guns is part of it. But like the way it's widescreen and his use of like close up, or like when De Niro walks in the bank during the heist, it like starts on his feet and then it closely zooms out. Like he does all kinds of tricks like that all the time, like cool transitions that always makes it look interesting, even if it's just like two people talking. His over the shoulder shots are like legit. Like in The Insider, it's all over the place. It's like one of the reasons I love The Insider so much is it's fascinating to watch him like figure out different ways to shoot dudes sitting in a room talking, but he always gives you something different. And that's part of why, like, it's not only is it like a long movie, but like the attention to detail to shoot all this stuff from all these different angles while it being a 2 hour and 50-minute movie is like amazing.
Hey, there's
meaningful.
There was a fan theory for the longest time with this movie, Paul, that De Niro and Pacino never actually acted together in this movie because of the way that it was shot, and it was strictly because they didn't have widescreen TVs. They weren't as common in the early 90s, so people didn't have access to that. It was disproven later because they were actually in the same shot together. But yeah, the way he shoots is very interesting. Hey, this scene though, when Pacino gets home, That's when you get the argument with his wife, and you get the famous line. What does he say? I got 3 goddamn bodies off the side of Venice Boulevard. I'm sorry if the goddamn chicken got overcooked.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the relationship really quick because he makes it clear that he was doing this before they met. He was already a detective. And his whole thing is, I don't talk about work at home. I'm not going to tell you about this terrible stuff that I see because that's not going to help me. It doesn't help our relationship. And he wants to harbor that because it helps him. It gives him fuel, I guess. So some of this is like, I kind of get her point where it's like, yeah, he's pretty vacant and he's not around and, you know, he's got crazy stuff happening. But it's like, you already knew that, right? Like, this isn't a surprise, is it? I don't know. I kind of feel like
it's pretty crazy, man, that he's just like on call 24/7.
Yeah.
And that's probably what, like, if you mentioned like kind of how you were breaking it down, like this is the top tier elite, I guess that's kind of what you probably would have to do to be in a unit like that.
Yeah, and especially if you're on a group like this already. Like once you're on it and there's like something that comes up or there's like a big, you know, like we kind of see some other stuff where it's like there's another crime that he that's only kind of partially related. The young prostitute that gets killed, which we'll talk about, but like he goes to that.
Well, it's also like yeah.
I mean,
so
I don't know. I kind of sometimes I get what she's saying, but I'm also like, you kind of get what you pay for. You know what this guy's doing.
This is his 3rd marriage.
I mean, this would be like dating a baseball player and being like, well, you're on the road 82, 81 games out of the year. It's like, yeah, I play baseball. I got road games. What do you want me to do? I don't know.
What I was promised when we got married, Joe, was sharing. What I'm getting is leftovers.
That's right. She says all of that. She's got a really bad haircut, by the way.
I don't know. She's
great.
She's
She's got micro
she's a great
bangs.
actress. The bangs are brutal. The bangs are brutal.
She's got micro bangs with a really diaper booty French bob,
and she's like double fisting Xanax and pot.
Yes,
that's
the whole
right.
movie.
Yeah, that's her thing.
A lot of cigs, ripping darts too. Okay, so we got to talk about. It took me like 10 viewings, maybe more, to figure out what happens with the money. And Paul, this is where I want you to talk about this. I can at least describe what he's talking about, but I don't totally get the math. So from the armored car, they steal these bearer bonds. De Niro meets with John Voight, who plays Nate, who's like his connection, his fencing connection.
Based on Eddie Bunker,
who's a real guy, who also is in Reservoir Dogs, does a bunch of other stuff.
And was a consultant on set.
He's like, okay, this guy, Roger Van Zant, owns these bonds. And De Niro's like, okay, I don't give a shit. He has insurance. He's like, well, why don't we can cash the bonds, I guess. See, this is where I don't understand. How does he get the money back? He's like, we'll sell them back to him. And so we get money on top. I don't get that.
I think the bearer bonds. So this is the initial heist that opens the movie, which, by the way, I wanted to say is kind of like, you mentioned this movie having homage given to it all the time. It's basically like a Christopher Nolan scene. The clock's ticking, tick, 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 tick. Like from when the time De Niro starts walking through there to the time you get through and they just crashes into that armored truck. It's almost like a Christopher Nolan scene. That's how influential this movie's been.
Maybe Nolan scenes are like Michael Mann scenes. Could that be it?
Oh, Joe's on his bullshit. He's ready to.
I think there's something to
strays
it.
At Christopher
there's
Nolan
similarity
again.
in the scope in which they shoot the widescreen. I think there's similarities there, but they get 1.6 million in bonds, right? And they're bearer bonds, which essentially like is a movie trick to say that they're like untraceable. Because typically you'd have like a bond number. They'd be able to trace exactly what was stolen. They could figure out a way to do this.
I bear the bond, which means if I have it, the money's mine, like cash, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It's like, yeah. But even so, he's like, John Voight plays the fence, and he's like, okay, I'll give you 40. You'll get 40 cents on the dollar, which is $640K. So to fence this shit, even though it's bearer bonds, he's only getting 40% already. So that's 640 to a crew of 5. And this is my question: does Neil get a bigger cut? Since he sets up
that's
the
not
job?
a lot.
Because everybody knows the amount they're getting. right? Like it's not something you can keep secret all the time.
I don't think so, dude, because he says to Waingro, I took your split out evenly out of our cut.
So it's like an even cut, and it's just his crew, and he just splits it, even though he has to plan it and all that shit.
Yeah,
probably makes it easier.
That's not a lot of money.
No,
it's think not. About all the planning, and you just killed 4 people.
Plus the expenses of Val Kilmer going and buying that, the risk of robbing a truck, the risk of robbing a fucking van. He walks through a hospital to do this. So like,
don't forget about the gas that costs money too.
Yeah,
fuel. Yeah,
the fuel to blow it up. Yeah. But like you start to do the math on it and you're like, okay, so if he does that and you divide it out, that's like $160 each, less if they have to do anything to like launder it. I don't know. Like I'm assuming it's clean and that's part of your fence fee when you're only getting 40 cents on the dollar. But so that's what you're mentioning, Greg. So then like Val Kilmer's walking around with like $150K and he comes home and he gives $8K to Ashley Judd. It's just like risk first reward, baby. This isn't worth it. And he's like, yeah, just go to the bookie. It's like $140K. Holy shit.
Not enough steaks in the freezer.
But this is one of the biggest critiques though, Joe. Because then Nate's idea is we know these bearer bonds belong to Van Zandt. Instead of like, let's just doing it on the street for $640, I'll call it Van Zandt and do 60 cents on the dollar and sell it to him for $960.
And he gets the insurance anyway, so he's not losing money.
Right. But I think this is like, why would you call the guy you just ripped off?
Well, that's what
I'm like. This is the dumbest idea ever. Yes, right. And it's like the whole.
Like, I'm gonna kill these guys.
It's the whole downfall because then Waingro gets involved with Van Zandt. It's just like it's crazy. But I mean, when you do the math, because there's that gig, right? So you're netting like, and they're doing gigs, like because then they have that Boolean heist that they bail on. Right. So there's like 3 heists in this. So they like doing this as steady work. You know what I mean? So, so if they're netting like 140 on that one, when they do the big job at the end, it's like 12 million. So they're netting like 2 million a piece.
Yeah. What's crazy is that, well, we're skipping ahead, but so let's talk about some informant work, because that seems to be a big part of, while this is happening, they're trying to run down who these guys are. They're working their informants. Vincent's team is looking for snitches. Tell me something. And this is when we get his interview with, I don't know who that guy is. He looks like Tim Hardaway to me. That actor.
Right. So that dude is his informant.
That's his CI. Yeah.
Yeah. His CI.
Great.
And he goes to him and he starts, Oh, it's awesome.
Hold on. First of all,
shows
Greg,
up like,
why is for the group, why is his hair slicked back there? His hair's different.
De Niro's?
Yeah, no, Pacino.
I'm sorry, Pacino?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing about Pacino. He shows up on this scene, and he shows up unannounced.
Yeah.
He's all wild, and he's basically yelling at the dude.
It's a great scene.
And there's cut scenes from this movie that aren't in the original version. There's scenes that allude to Pacino being addicted to cocaine that aren't actually in this movie.
Yeah, that's a huge part of like the mythical lore of this movie, which is why you explains at least a little bit of why he's like so wild. Because you're like, he's just like flying off the handle left and right because he's been doing cocaine the whole movie. But they cut.
Yeah, he's got those outbursts, and they're supposed to be tied back to the cocaine. That's why when Pacino talks all the time, like he's always got these crazy outbursts.
Okay,
but he talks to this dude, and this dude says that he's
Tim
gonna.
Hardaway?
He says, "Yeah, Tim Hardaway." He says he's got a guy to meet him tomorrow at the bar. He's like tomorrow. Tomorrow.
When I get to Phoenix, he'll be rising. Like, what is he doing? What is
he goes? He goes. Tell me something. Lie to me. Tell me you fell in love.
Yeah.
I'll believe you. I'll buy that.
Yeah. So we meet his brother Tone Loc, literally
Tone Loc, wild thing.
And Tone Loc, they have an exchange, and he basically says, "Hey, this guy I know used to be I was in Folsom with," and he calls everybody Slick. And we learned on the crime scene investigation that a witness heard one of the robbers refer to someone as Slick. So they run. This is a little bit. I think
I got to say this.
Go ahead.
When he first starts telling him the story, he's like, "I know a guy. He's a criminal. he says that they got a big job.
Yeah, this is great.
And Pacino's like, "Oh, that's the news. That's the piece of information
Greg,
you got for me."
He goes, "Well, I am over fucking whelmed."
And then he goes, "Wasting my motherfucking time."
Yeah. So basically, he's like, "Give me more than that." But he says that this nickname that he uses, that this guy uses, they run it through a database, and they come up with a bunch of people. And one of the guys they come up with is Tom Sizemore.
It's one of the loosest like plot points in the movie. If you wanted to be super critical, because like Pacino's like, "Fuck this," and walks off, and Tone Loc's like, "The slick was no joke, man." And off of that, Pacino turns around and his interest is piqued, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like, that's a really like. It's first of all, it's not like a super common nickname, but it's not a super uncommon one. I don't know. I mean, you got to have something, so it works, but it's like it's loose.
I'll say this
at the beginning, like when they did the robbery, there was a homeless man that was nearby, and they ask him like, "Did he see anyone?" He says, "No, the only thing he heard is I heard one of the guys call the other one Slick."
Yeah,
and so that's what planted the seed in Pacino's ear for this to be relevant later. But yes, you're right. It's a pretty loose plot point.
I don't think it's super unrealistic that a CI would provide a nickname that would help figure out a case. I'll be honest with you. In my experience, that's not totally unrealistic. But to have the whole identification of this whole crew and how he gets into all of them be this, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it doesn't ruin the movie for me at all. I'm just like, "Oh, sweet, Tone Loc. I like that one song." I'm on to the next scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But now we basically, because they run through Michael Chirito, which is Tom Sizemore's character, he's got like all these armed robbery arrests. He's done like 20 years or something, I think, different stints. So like, okay, this is our guy probably, and they can connect him to. They're basically like, let's watch him. Let's watch Chirito. And
wait, is Chirito they're in? Why is Chirito they're in?
He's Slick.
Oh, because he's Slick. He's the one that says Slick. He's the one that says Slick all the time. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So they're like, follow this guy, and they basically get into everybody else. De Niro and Val Kilmer.
By the way, dude, when they're walking out of the restaurant, and it's like they're like doing the breakdown shit. Number one, it's like one of the most awesome things ever. Like, so you've got like Pacino and all his cops, like on top of the building.
Cool scene.
And they're like breaking it down, and like they've done a dinner, and you're kind of getting to know the criminals a little bit on the dinner piece, and then they walk out, and they're like breaking each one of them down, and they're like, "We don't know Neil." And then I always love this type of shit because it's so masterful. And then he's like, "All right, the gun." And they all stand up, and there's like 14 of them straight across, all in like suits and ties. And I'm like, really? Is that how that would go down? Would you get on the roof for that? You would?
Yeah.
Is that's CIS, right? Because they got the
yeah, those are SIS is the team that they're using for that. Yeah. But yeah, all of that. So they're basically like, now that they're following these guys, they're pretty sure this is the group. And this is where we get the big time burglary, which other movies I feel like don't do this, or they want this to be an action scene, and it's not. This is basically like a methodical, like workman-like approach to this robbery. Well, not a robbery, a burglary, which is they're going to like cut the power to this building. They go in at night. They're drilling through. Val Kilmer, of course, is the technician who's like doing all this work. Paul,
it's
you look like
Thief-like.
It is. It's exactly like
Thief. Sizemore's getting up on the telephone line. He's doing some of the cutting off the alarm, just like Belushi out of Thief in the opening scene. And then Kilmer's in there using a drill on a safe, just like Frank.
Just like Khan did. Yep,
yeah,
that's right. It is. Go ahead.
That's a cool scene, though.
It's so cool.
When De Niro's basically on watch, and he stands in the shadows, and they've got this I don't want to say infrared night scope camera.
Yeah, police do.
That's showing every. What was it, Joe?
The police do. They're watching from
the police.
Like a yard
they're watching
next door.
this spot.
Yes.
Yeah, they had a tip that this is where these guys might be hitting next, and so they're surveilling it. And De Niro stands in the shadows, and they've got this impatient cop in one of the surveillance vans. He's like asking questions, and Pacino's like, basically in so many words, "Shut up, chill out." And so
Greg, let me
You've got
interject
Val
really quick.
Kilmer.
Sorry. So the
There's an
SWAT team
amazing
is,
scene in here too.
yes. So this is the SWAT team with them, because the
Yes.
idea is going to be these guys are going to rob the place, and when they come out with merchandise or items or whatever, we're going to arrest them, and the SWAT team is going to swarm on them. So you have the detectives
Right.
that are like the investigative group, and then you have the tactical guys who just want to like kick everybody's ass. And remember that one guy's
Yeah,
like,
and that's
why aren't they coming out? My captain says that we got to go. He's like, I have tactical control. Like he goes through that whole thing.
yeah, but the scene is this. It's so badass because you've got Val Kilmer inside the building drilling, and you've got the impatient SWAT guy in the van, and he sits down. And when he sits down, the butt of his gun hits the van and makes noise. And they're across the street. De Niro looks over, and he stares in the direction of it. And then this is like the first kind of cool face-off you get between De Niro and Pacino, but it's through the TV, through this night scope camera. And I just thought that it was so cool. There's nothing being said. It's just Pacino staring at the camera and De Niro staring at the van, and nothing's happening. De Niro walks inside, taps Val Kilmer on the shoulder, and says, "We walk."
Yeah,
And-
Kilmer's like, I'm almost there. And he goes, we're walking now.
And the attention to
Yeah.
detail with that too, because Greg, like that scene where you mentioned, like he stands outside and then he backs up into like shadows, so you can't see him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Mann does a shot behind Pacino and Wes Studi looking at two separate monitors, one that shows him backing up, and the other one that like slowly comes in with like that night vision, and like.
So
how
cool.
much time he spent thinking of that and choreographing, like, here's where you're going to stand, and the marking and all the shit that goes into that. Like, those are the little flares that make this not like your traditional like crime movie. Like, there's just more to this than like your normal
a
movie.
If this was made now, you wouldn't get that detail. They would just be like hitting beats, going,
Yes.
and you wouldn't get that character development. You wouldn't get, and the cool character development here is how De Niro is living by the code, because earlier on he says that basically that if you can't walk out on or you need to be able to walk out of anything in your life in 30 seconds flat if you see heat coming around the corner. And so this is that moment.
Yep.
He kind of, and all it was a noise. It was just a noise in a van, and he's like, "We're out. That's it."
Is this the #1 movie at referencing itself within the movie? I think it might be.
I mean, they say heat. Geez, I'm trying to think what else would even come close to
Dude,
that.
they mention it like 4 times in the movie.
It's got to be this.
You know?
But the scene that I like is when they're starting to come out, the police are all like, what do we do? What do we do? Because Michael T. Williamson is on the roof with one of the SWAT officers, and he's like, they're not carrying anything. And Vince is like, I know. And he looks at each guy, and they're all like, they're not robbing anything. Like, if we arrest them, this is going to be nothing. It's going to be like a breaking and entering charge. They'll be out in 6 months, and we wasted this whole case. And so he's like, let them walk. And that's when the guy's like, we're not letting them walk, the SWAT guy. And he's like, I have, what does he say? I have tactical command that supersedes your rank. They will walk, and you will let them. They're like, so they have to go. They leave. Don't get them.
And then we jump to the next scene, and basically we get Waingro killing a hooker.
So we got to talk Waingro here. We got to talk about this, guys. I got to talk about this.
All right, go for it, Joe.
First of all, Paul talked about transitions. There's one. This transition scene at the end of this is like elite. It's unbelievably good. When he's grabbing the girl and then they cut to the beer bottle getting opened, you're like, oh shit. Why do we have this storyline? First of all, let me say that I love it, and I want a movie about this. But why do we have Waingro as a white supremacist serial killer? Why is that in this movie?
We want to hate him.
I already do.
But we really want to hate him, Joe.
Yeah, I mean,
what's worse? What's worse than a white supremacist?
I guess one that is also a serial killer, which is kind of what this is.
One that's also a serial killer of hookers.
Yeah.
Nobody wants serial killers of hookers. And then what's worse than that is someone that's impatiently ordering coffee and not sticking around for his order after he orders it. This dude sucks.
Oh, he definitely sucks. I'm wondering how this drives the movie forward. I guess
it doesn't, man. I think like if you wanted to get super critical and like if I wanted to be film snobby nerdy and start talking about why I like Thief a little bit more than I like Heat, it's because Thief's a shorter movie and there's less extra stuff in it. Like he gets a little out of control with story and plot here. And like there's a number of things you could put on the cutting room floor. The serial killer thing with Waingro, Natalie Portman, the stepdaughter thing, Ashley Judd cheating. I know it gives you Hank Azaria ratting, but it just like you don't need all this shit. The Dennis Haysbert background. I like it though. I like it. It's like a guilty pleasure.
Too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like this. I like that Waingro is a serial killer because then so he kills this girl. That's a creepy fucking scene when he's like the Grim Reaper's visiting you. That's terrifying.
Super dark.
Yeah, horribly dark. But then we get a crime scene where Al Pacino goes to the crime scene of this slain girl, and the crime scene tech, like the medical examiner, is like, "Yeah, this is just like the other ones. I bet the DNA is going to show that you got a series." So like we are being told that this character is a serial killer, and we are never. It makes me think that there's like 30 minutes more of this movie that has that stuff in it that we don't even talk about that he cut.
Maybe.
So I think it adds a certain level of code to De Niro's character.
Okay.
Any mistake that happens during one of these heists, he's going to take care of it. With him getting away, when they're at the diner, I think as De Niro's a man that ponders. He is constantly pondering. He's constantly thinking. So my view on it was that in the end, like I didn't know how this movie was going to end, but I knew no matter what, De Niro is finding him and he is, spoiler alert, he's going to murder him. So I think that all just kind of, people like a story, right? People like a little buildup. Like why should he kill this guy? Make him bad, make him a piece of shit. And have De Niro take care of him in the hotel room. I think that was really cool. I think it was needed for the code. For the code.
It does.
That's
I like that, Mark. It does differentiate because they're both criminals who have killed people in a robbery setting. But now you're like, oh, Waingro's different. He's like subhuman. De Niro, he killed people. He's robbing people, but you're right. He does have this like morality and this kind of samurai outlook where Waingro's just
he's a loose end
scum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, this leads us up to the next scene, and this is a pretty funny moment here. Again, Tom Sizemore gets another iconic line. They meet up and they say, "Hey, are we gonna dip out? Where did all this heat come from?" Again, referencing the movie in their meetup, and they're trying to decide, all right, do we cut ties? We walk away from everything right now, and
because they've lined up the bank.
Yeah, because they've got another job lined up.
But they're like, hey, we know the police are on us.
Yeah, and so Val Kilmer's like, his character Chris is like, I got to, man. I'm out after this, but I need this. And so then they ask Tom Sizemore's character, and he basically says, "Whatever you say, man, I'm with you." And he's like, "Not this time. It's you got to make your own decision." So he looks over at Val Kilmer, and he knows that Val Kilmer's in on it, and he goes, "The action is the juice." Such a good line. I mean, we don't get many lines from Sizemore through the whole movie, but every time he opens his mouth, it's so
and
good.
He milks the
it makes
shit
me want to
out
know
of
if these are. Yeah, it makes me want to know if these are ad libs because they're so good.
He definitely is like adding some sauce to the pauses and like the lip smacking.
He
and
looks down.
Looks down and looks up and he's definitely adding some sauce to it.
He's juicing it.
Yeah. It's great.
So it's good,
it's so
man.
Good. It's
the
great.
The back of this T-shirt is, for me, the action is the juice. It says it on this shirt.
Nice.
Like,
oh, that's cool.
That's like the line of this movie.
Is this the best looking De Niro era?
Yeah.
He's like pretty sharp looking here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Clean
he's
cut,
got like
the
a very
haircut looks
nice,
good.
like this. The haircut is perfect.
He looks good. I noticed you have the goatee for the Neil look.
It's not the comparison I was going for there, because I realized very quickly I cannot pull off the De Niro. Like his goatee game is tight and
It's very manicured.
It's very
Hey,
nice.
do y'all notice how De Niro does this thing where whenever he's talking, he tilts his head down?
No,
like I don't get. I mean, it does a lot, but it's a him thing. It's an idiosyncrasy that he does. Yeah, like
You gotta
that.
do the
Mark.
face, Greg.
Yeah,
It's probably intentional, dude. It's probably those dudes are super aware of how they look on camera and stuff. He's probably doing that on purpose.
I mean, I did read that Mann, because there was one. I read an article, or I don't know, maybe it was like a Reddit post or something, but it was basically like, why are his suits so big? Like he's wearing these.
They are
long
huge. I think it
suits.
was the era. I think it's the era.
So you would think, but Mann responded to that, and he said he's carrying a weapon under his jacket, so he needs it to be bigger so that it doesn't print when he's walking.
Oh shit! It's practical, of course.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's not like a zoot suit or anything either.
Yeah,
you know, they're,
right.
They're
I mean, it just look a little bit.
It's basically like the Talking Heads, is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Seriously, dude.
It kind of does.
It's a
big.
little bit over the top.
It's big. All right, we get the bank robbery.
So the police brace basically the dude that Val Kilmer's wife was sleeping with.
Yeah.
Because they figure out that this could possibly be an in to get her to flip. And again, we get another great Pacino line where they bring him into the police station and they're talking to him. And what does he say? He goes, in regards to Val Kilmer's wife, she's got a great ass, and you've got your head all the way up it.
Ad-libbed.
Apparently, that was an ad lib.
Yeah. And Hank Azaria is like completely confused. Like he looks like stunned.
He didn't know that's what he was going to say.
Right.
And so his stunned look was genuine.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's hilarious. But again, Pacino with more iconic lines in this. There's a lot of one-liners that can be taken from this whole movie.
Yes.
So,
hey, before we go to the bank robbery.
Yeah.
So back to so their decision here is like they're making like 150 to 200K per heist, and this is a $2 million gig. So like they realize that these guys are onto them at some point, right? And it's just like,
yep.
They still are deciding. So when they're making that decision, it's like, we know the heat's on us, but like they're going to go to jail for the same length of time, whether it's 200K or 2 million. So it's, I don't know. Like, I guess it's like, you don't get these gigs all the time at this level, 12 million bucks.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say 2 million, you're saying that's
each
the cut.
person.
Yeah. Because Kelso, Tom Noonan, His the guy in the wheelchair that sets this up. He's like, it's 12.2 million.
And guess what Kelso gets paid? 10% plus 100K.
You're just bleeding. If you're
and then Nate's ripping off. Nate's peeling off another 10-15 at least.
Oh yeah, it's a fence.
As his fence and his go-to and his setup dude for passports and his way. Like, how is he going to get his money to New Zealand? Think about all this shit. It's just
that's why you got to do all these robberies.
But it's all in the movie. Like, if you wanted to really nerd out, like, Mann's got all the detail and all the numbers work. Such a geek. It's awesome.
It is awesome.
Hey Joe, turn your mic so it's facing you.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. There we go.
So, all right, they're all in. We're gonna do this bank robbery, even though we know the police are watching us, which means we're probably running a much higher risk than we would.
Hold on, before there's one big scene we can't skip over here. So they know that the heat's on them, so they basically Uno reverse the cops, and they go and make them think that they're like planning a heist. The cops go and they stand in the spot where they were all talking, and they start looking around trying to figure out what were they talking about. What's the next heist? What are they doing? And Pacino goes, you know what they're looking at? I'll tell you what they're looking at. They're looking at us. And then we get a clip of De Niro on a crane taking pictures of them.
Smiling, smugly.
Smiling.
The police department.
The police department.
LAPD, smile. Here we are, motherfucker.
It's such a good line.
It's good. It's good.
But now everything's out in the open.
Yeah.
I know, we're on to you, as well. So basically we get Pacino, who's following De Niro in a helicopter. They land the helicopter, he jumps in a car, he chases him down, he pulls him over.
Good Moby Jam.
Walks up to and he pulls him over. He walks up to the car. De Niro rolls down the window. Pacino's got a gun in his hand, kind of hidden behind his back just for safety. And he goes, "Hey, how you doing? What do you say I buy you a cup of coffee?" And De Niro goes, "Okay." And we get the diner scene.
Yeah.
Which is
apparently
really great.
Based on a real life incident that this storyline was modeled off a guy that Mann met, Chuck Adamson, who's a Chicago Police Department detective who had a similar trajectory with a criminal, and he had a similar showdown. Both the end of this movie and the coffee scene, they did that, where they like ran into each other on the street. Yeah, and we're like, "Hey, let's just get a cup of coffee." I mean,
it's a cool scene.
It's a great scene.
But I also got to say that this is the very first time that Pacino and De Niro were ever in a scene together.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Like it had never happened before. So this is their first interaction, and you get, it's so strange because they're enemies here, but they're also basically, like, in a weird way, they start having like this therapy session.
They're the same guy.
They find out that they're the same guy.
Joe, were you the one that had the take that was like, it's kind of an overrated scene?
Yeah.
Somebody told me that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What?
You can kind of like, and I don't know is that a thing that like wears on you over time? Like, I was so into like this movie in general. And like, I guarantee you when I was like 13, I thought this was the best scene. Like, I thought it was awesome. But like now it's just like, they're a little too cute. Like, these are adversaries. Like, it's a little hammy. Potentially.
I think you're right that because I've seen this movie 50 times, maybe it's like Mark is probably like, that's the best scene I've ever that I've ever had. I just watched this a week ago. Like, this is one of the best scenes ever. Not to say that Mark is like,
it's great.
Mark doesn't know what he's talking about, but like, it's fresh for him. It's not fresh for me. So I'm like, it's good. Barbecues and ball games? What the fuck is that? It's all right.
It is great.
It says a lot. I think it says a lot to the characters. Again, Mann's focusing so hard on character development.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Why do you give a shit?
Let me ask you guys this. If these, okay, all right. If it's Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson, do they have this meetup? Or is it because it's Pacino, De Niro, they've never been on the screen together, and this like face off with these two Italian-American actors who have been in so many movies in the 70s and 80s, and we're going to have them sit across from each other as cop and robber and do this? Or is it always in the script?
I think it's like I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, because I think it's an excellent like plot device. Having these guys meet makes everything more personal afterwards.
Sure.
And there's still like another hour of the movie to go. So it's super smart in that regard. But and honestly, like, it is like an awesome scene. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter how many times I watch this movie. It's not like I watch that scene and I'm like not enthralled. Like, it's so well done. The dudes are acting well. Greg, the De Niro head nod thing happens like 14 times, or like he just holds it the whole time. I don't know which, but he's doing it a lot. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's great. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, I think after you've seen it 25 times, it's just like, yeah, kind of like the shootout, man. You know what I mean?
Stop. That's wrong. Bad take.
And I got a question for you, Joe. I have a question for you. We recently did a podcast on a small movie called Looper that also had a diner scene. Would you put that diner scene over?
No, this is better.
over this?
No, this is better. This is definitely better.
What's wrong with your face, Mark? What are you doing?
Would you put this over this diner scene, Joe?
This one is definitely better. This one's definitely better.
Okay.
You turn on Heat to watch the diner scene, Joe?
No.
You turn on Heat to watch the shootout scene?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I meant, dude. It's not a bad take.
Oh, okay.
That was what I was saying.
I thought you were saying the shootout was over.
No, I'm not turning it on to watch De Niro talk to Pacino for the 27th time. It is great. It's like an all-time scene because those dudes are legends.
Yeah.
In this peak of their powers, but the shootout scene is the moneymaker.
Who gets the best out of this exchange? I think
a great question.
I think Pacino's trying really hard. And maybe it's his character, but he's trying, and De Niro is like more withholding, which is probably natural.
Okay, I think De Niro gets the upper hand here.
I do too,
because he's giving him life advice, and he says, "So I spend my life again." We referenced the Heat walking out 30 seconds, right? And you spend your life chasing me. So.
Yeah,
he's kind of giving him life advice in this scenario, and so I think De Niro gets the upper hand.
There's a flip side to that coin.
Well, it's important too because they're both explaining why what they're doing is important. Like why? Like I think Pacino even asked De Niro, like, "Why are you doing this?" He's like, "What else is there?" Like that hits. I feel like from the beginning of the movie, how you see De Niro living his life. It hits when he's like, "There's nothing else for me." Like that makes so much sense for him to say something like that to his adversary.
This is where I think Pacino gets. I think De Niro wins the scene, but I think Pacino's character is to me. I'm always on the Pacino side because he's like, "There's some poor bastard whose wife's you're going to make a widow." Then that's when I have to do what I got to do. Which, all right, he says, "Brother, you are going down."
Well, that's another point too. Is like there's layers to this because it's like you could say like Neil wins over Hannah, or you could say, Al wins over Bob, right?
Yeah.
Like you could look at it like as an actor versus a character. I think I'd vote for Bob on both accounts. I think like Al's a little loose, and
I
he's
think
keeping it closer to the vest.
I think his character is more. He's more like a live wire, Pacino's is. But I also think he's more, I think I see his point more. De Niro's like, "Hey man, I'm stealing, I'm robbing. If I got to kill people, I'm killing people." Pacino's like, "I get it. You like this adrenaline. I get the same adrenaline from doing something similar, but you're not going to kill innocent people. Then I got to kill you."
They're the ultimate frenemies in this moment.
For sure. Because they're very similar, like you said at the top, Greg. They're like they find out that they're basically the same person, just doing the different version of the same thing. And then we get the scene where he's like, "I had coffee with Macaulay half an hour ago," because they lose the surveillance. He drives to under LAX and they can't trace him. And I got to talk about this, guys, for a second before we get to the shootout, because that's the next big scene. Probably we're going to spend a lot of time there. Pacino's character is so fucking rude to all of his detectives. He multiple times is on the phone with one of these guys, and he just says what he wants, and then he just hangs up on them, like right away, and they just take it, which I guess you would, but like he never is like goodbye or thanks or hey, you guys are doing a great job. He's just like, I want around the clock surveillance. When he sits in a restaurant, I want to see who he's sitting with. And then he just goes, and that's it. And the guy's like, okay. And
Or
he's
he
on him.
He like pauses for a second. He's like, "Should I say bye?" No, just hang up.
Yes,
But
yes.
like the other thing, the flip side of that coin is like they go out to dinner, and you're like, okay, this dude's like getting out with the crew and like getting drunk and having fun with the families and stuff like that. So like there is a lighter side to him. But yeah, like at work, he's like 100% business.
Yes.
Like he will not even say salutations.
Right. It's got to be a thing that I'm sure Michael Mann like researched. It was like, this guy shouldn't say goodbye or show like any emotion.
This is a little before my time, but the phone in the car is badass.
Oh, yeah.
When did that stop?
You're talking about a car phone?
Yeah. When did the car phone stop? How do I get that in the Mustang?
you can get one, I'm sure. It probably stopped in like the
and not too early 2000s.
Yeah.
Listen, my mom had one of those big econo vans that's got like the TV in the back and stuff, and it had a phone in it. And growing up, it was a rule that me and my cousins don't touch the phone. It is so expensive to make a phone call.
We have it, we just never use it.
Yeah, it was for emergencies only. You don't use the van phone.
You weren't just calling out to your buddies like, "Hey, what's up, man? On the road."
No,
Chilling.
you definitely did not. And it's so funny because it was corded too.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah. See, he picks it up.
Yeah.
All right, should we're at the robbery here, bank robbery.
Well, I just want to, before we get to the robbery, there's one last detail that I need to throw in.
Mhm.
A little actor we got to throw a little nod to. A supporting actor by the name of Henry Rollins is in this.
Yeah, Hank.
Yeah, shout out Henry.
Yeah, Hank.
Love Henry Rollins.
He's Van Zant's basically muscle or sidekick in this. And Van Zant's the one that they stole the bearer bonds from, that they were gonna try and sell them back to.
Are we dealing with these guys?
That's
Very
the
good.
line.
That's the line, dude. This is peak
Yeah.
jacked Henry. He's gigantic in this.
Yeah, he's got traps up to his fucking ears.
Yeah,
and he's working for.
He's got
Fichtner.
no
Yeah.
neck. Hey, just another little side thing. If you got Henry Rollins back, Paul, do you think you could choke him?
I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'd have to sink it in. I don't know.
He's got no neck.
He's got no neck.
Joe?
I don't know, man. Now I could. If you look at him now, he's smaller, a lot smaller, but he was huge.
No.
then.
I'm talking jacked Henry.
Rollins
Could
band, Rollins.
Yeah, all veiny necked out.
Does he
Could you
know?
choke
Does he
out
know
Henry
any
Rollins?
defense? Like, is he?
No,
Is he
I mean,
old?
he just nope. He's just strong.
He's going out.
You choking Henry Rollins?
Sure. Yeah.
You heard it here first.
I mean, it
Yeah,
is
that's
just
right.
cutting off the carotids, right? So,
I mean, if he's not
But
hand
that
fighting,
man
he's probably pulling.
Pull.
I don't know,
the
man.
beast. One
Eyebrows
other
down.
thing, before we get into the robbery, if you were just innocently working as a cook, you know, trying to build your way back into your life one day, and somebody came into you and was like, "I need to know right now, if you're going to do this job, it's right now. I need a driver. You remember the gig? Yeah. Are you in or out? Are you cool? Yeah, I'm cool, man." It's like no information. Like, what are we doing? How
Yeah.
much? What's my cut? Like, what? Like, he's like, "Yeah, I'm in." It's just like,
I'm like-
geez, dude, the mystique of the male bravado, dude. Like,
For
I
sure.
would probably say, "Yeah, if De Niro talked to me in that context." Yes, yes, Mr. De Niro.
Am I
But
dropping
it's
somebody
wise.
off? Do I get shot at?
Who's more intimidating, De Niro or Pacino in this movie?
De Niro.
Nero.
I find De Niro more intimidating. I find like Al more like drama and like emotional and can convey more things, but like De Niro's more intimidating for me.
He's super smoldering in this movie too. Really low.
When he calls Van Zant on the phone.
Great.
And what's the line he says?
He's like, "Who is this?" He's like, "You know who this is."
It's like there's a ghost. There's a ghost on the
No,
other
it's-
end of his phone.
He says, "I'm talking to an empty telephone because there's a dead man on the
Yeah, I'm
other end
talking
of
to
this
an empty
line."
telephone.
There's a dead man on his fucking light. And Greg, that's an awesome, like another man scene, like where he's like tight zoom on like De Niro's head and it like closely zooms in as he's getting more and more pissed off. It like makes
Yes.
you feel it like as the viewer. And like that's man just adding some sauce to it.
Wait, isn't Val Kilmer standing right
Yeah.
next to him in the scene?
Yeah.
Like Val Kilmer's like, yeah,
For some
get
reason
him.
they're in a fucking restaurant, like kitchen or something.
Yeah, he's
making
like
this
using
call.
a house
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah,
He's using the
it's
house
kind of
phone.
funny where they're at. Some people are walking by and shit. What if somebody's just like, "There's a dead man on?" You're like, "Holy shit, man! That guy's
Guys just like busting tables. What?
Hey, boss, there's two
fucking
dudes in the kitchen
lit over there,
talking
dude.
about dead men on the phone.
He doesn't slam the phone down, which I think is sick, though. He just like hangs up. Cool.
And
the little extra flair.
I love Fichtner's
Yeah.
look after that too. He's like, "Oh shit." And
Yeah,
like
I
it
fucked
cuts
up.
to him like later in the movie, and he's got like stubble, and he hasn't been sleeping. You can tell it's like
Mhm.
he's like worried about this.
When he's in his gray sweatsuit.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right, boys.
So
this is what we
this-
came for.
So we get to the bank scene.
Yeah.
We get the guys walking into the bank, and they're all wearing suits. And at first, when I first saw this, I was like, "Oh, they're casing the joint." I didn't realize they were going to rob it then.
Oh.
So they're looking around. I see them looking at the cameras. You see them looking at the guards. They're looking at the tellers. They're looking at the people. They're all split up. They're not all together. And simultaneously, while this is going down, Waingro basically tips off the cops that this is the bank that they were going to rob next. So Al Pacino and his crew are basically running, but they're late to the scene.
Daytime robbery,
then-
too, which is insane.
Daytime robbery, yeah. And basically, like we talked about earlier, De Niro's in charge. I think they all simultaneously put on masks, which I don't understand why they put the masks on.
Except for Val Kilmer, who doesn't.
Except for Val Kilmer, who doesn't put on a mask at all.
I think it's because he's already going to be in the back. I think because they cut the power to the bank. They bust in and they do that
cut
overnight.
the like security or whatever.
Yeah. What I thought was the guys that are on the bank floor, so De Niro and Sizemore, they put the masks on so the people won't describe them. But since Kilmer is mainly in the back going through everything, he's like, I don't need a mask. Is the only thing I can think of.
More efficient.
Yeah. Because they basically, this is where you get the thing where he's like, when the scene when De Niro's telling the patrons, this is the government's money, it's not your money, your money's insured, you're not going to lose a dime. And he's walking on the bank like teller stations. He's got his vest open with all the gear on it, head covering on. That's an awesome scene.
You know what? And there's like this nuance of like psychology to it too, because he's like, you're not feeling well, your heart not feeling well. Go ahead and feel free to lean up against the wall. It's like you didn't offer them shit, dude. Like who's leaning up against the wall?
If you got a heart condition, lean against the wall.
It's like I care about you. Don't fuck with me. Like I won't kill you if you don't mess with me. Like type of like psychology.
Yeah.
This scene is basically replicated in so many movies.
Yes.
So many movies basically do this exact same type of scene. They do it in Batman. They do it in The Town, Place Beyond the Pines. I mean, there's so many movies that do this exact same bank robbery.
Every bank robbery movie post Heat owes a lot to Heat.
Except for Point Break,
which came
had
before.
A man stand on top of the desk.
It's true. That's true.
That's right.
Paul does love Point Break.
Point Break's great, man.
Point Break's all right.
Joe's like
Joe's
like,
always
let's
out
do a
here.
podcast on Point Break. Then we get on there and Joe just shits on Point Break for like an hour.
Listen,
I'm just like, what are we doing, dude? This movie rips. Like
he got it back.
Huh?
He got it back like tenfold when we did The Crow. I shit on The Crow the whole
he
way
did.
through.
I took my lumps on The Crow.
The Crow's rough. It's rough, man.
It's not rough. Stop it.
Are you excited for the remake?
Dude, it made like $1 million. Like they pulled it at theaters already.
Bombed.
Yeah,
it bombed so bad.
6% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It didn't look great.
Great idea to remake that, idiots. All right. So they get the money. They go out in the order, and our guy Dennis Haysbert is the driver. And we've seen we didn't really talk about it, but he's an ex-con who's like on parole, trying to get his life back together. He's got a girlfriend. She seems really supportive and very nice. Unfortunately for her, because this isn't going to end well for him. Sizemore gets in the car first. He's a jackass he's like, we did it. De Niro next, and at the same time as this is happening, man, the way Paul and I talk about this all the time. When a master director is at work on an action scene, when you know exactly where a set piece is happening, what it looks like, and where everybody is, and this is one of the best ones. I think Brian De Palma is the best. This might be the second best scene that I can think of, where you have two groups converging on a single point of action, and everyone, I know where they are the whole time.
And it's driving anxiety. And the thing that's like more grandiose with Mann relative to like De Palma is Mann has this like, it just feels like a huge scale. Like when he does this shot looking back on them where like Hannah's, running up their ass and coming down that giant like road in the middle of LA, it feels so big. You know what I mean? But like at the same time, like there's the cops shooting them from this direction and they have a little bit of time before they're going to be catching fire from the other way. So they're firing both ways, and it's adding this anxiety in the middle of the shootout, which like I think bad directors just do the shooting and the quick cuts and it's back and forth and somebody gets shot and that's the drama. But like adding that piece of like understanding how a viewer would build anxiety, and I'm rooting for De Niro in this moment. It doesn't make sense. Like to our conversation earlier about who are you rooting for, like it gets mixed for me. And then in this moment, I feel like they're trapped and I want them to get out. Yeah. And I know that's not the way I should feel.
The setup for the actual shooting, I think, is like unbelievable. So Kilmer's the last one to come out, and as he's walking out of the bank, they cut to Wes Studi and Michael T. Williamson, they're across the street and they're approaching alongside like a box truck, like a moving van. And you see them from their point of view over their shoulder, look into the bank and they see Kilmer walking out. And then it cuts back to Kilmer, like a close-up of his face, and his face turns from a smile to like stoic immediately because he obviously sees police officers, and he immediately starts shooting over the cars, shoots at them, and then he gets in the car and they're off and they're getting shot at as they're driving. And we gotta say, all of this was filmed on location, not a soundstage. This was downtown LA in Century City, I believe. Like, this is a real street that he used to shoot this action scene. That's probably, I don't know, 10 minutes long. Constant shooting.
Incredibly loud, like just one of the greatest all-time shootout scenes.
That's the other thing. So we got to talk about that first. He put microphones in.
Yeah.
Greg, tell me.
So they mic'd up the buildings. Like, they strategically placed mics all around the downtown area, so that traditionally when they do these shootout scenes, they'll add the gunshots post. After it's done, they'll go in and add the gunshots. For this one specifically, they put the mics around so that it would catch the reverb of all the buildings. And so you basically get these really loud, realistic gun sounds, which it was unlike anything else. I actually tried to do some research to see if anyone else has tried to do this since then. I couldn't find anything on it, but I was real curious as to if any other movies have lifted this technique.
I think it's too hard. They all ADR it.
That's crazy.
The other thing
it's awesome. That's probably the best trivia fact, best detail of the entire movie is the gun sounds of this shootout.
Yes, it's unbelievably loud. The other thing I read is that Mann chose specific weapons for each guy so that the sound of their rifle would be different than the other one. So it wouldn't just be like a spray of, so like Val Kilmer and De Niro are using like a CAR 15, which is like an AR-15, a M16 variant, a shortened version of that. Tom Sizemore are using a Galil, which is Israeli. And then I don't even know what Al Pacino has. He has like a Smith & Wesson or something. I don't know.
Why does Michael T. Williams have a fucking shotgun?
Poor bastard. I know.
I don't know what is that going to do for you, bud?
Nothing.
Holy
what were you saying,
shit.
Mark?
He's using a FAL. It's FAL.
Okay. It's a Belgian rifle.
Very, like, yeah.
The Call of Duty boys know what that is.
It's just crazy that but that's like, so he basically is like, I want to have each of these guys have their own signature, so you know the sound of Val Kilmer shooting is different than the sound of Al Pacino shooting, which is different than the sound of Tom Sizemore shooting, which is, again, like such a level of detail. It's unbelievable. Val Kilmer, I think, owns the scene. I think he's the best. He's the most impressive in this, but they're doing like overlapping fire. Yeah.
Man said like he's one of the best I've ever seen at, and he said that like an FBI guy told him that Val Kilmer would be able to outshoot like a lot of like and like, you know, whatever, like cops.
Well, I heard that there's several different anecdotes where the scene of him after they are kind of in the street and he's shooting back and forth, right? He's shooting at the police in front of him and then he has to shoot behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were mentioning, Paul, he does a reload, like a combat reload in that scene. And I have heard that clip has been shown to recruits, I believe in the Marine Corps boot camp, and said, if this actor can reload like this, there's no reason that you guys shouldn't be able to do this, which is unbelievable. Greg, did you hear the similar?
Val Kilmer had actual training with weapons when he was growing up. He was taught how to use guns. So he and some of the other people that were brought on were the ones that actually taught the rest of the actors how to handle the weapons. So Val Kilmer had practical use of this.
And that's another thing. I feel like Platoon is like the first movie where the actors like went through like a boot camp, but this is took it to another level where Mann had all of these guys training with live ammunition, where they were actually they staged the shooting where they're in the street, they're doing the overlapping fire, they're doing like the bounding cover. He had them doing that over and over and over with live ammo, so that when they used blanks, they were like They looked proficient, and that's why they look like they know what they're doing.
And it's a small thing too, but like these guys look like a gun is comfortable in their hand and that they've shot a gun before. And if you watch other movies closely, you can see like there's not as much diligence in that area. Like I mean, maybe it gets by and it works 90% of the time, but like everything is super tight and smooth here. It's freaking awesome.
So there was another cool detail of something that Michael Mann did is he took these cars out to a shooting range and they lit them up with guns, and then they brought the cars back and they bonded them, filled them with squibs, and repainted them so that when the squibs blew up, it was actual bullet holes under the spot.
I didn't know that.
So it was I mean, it's just attention to detail in the stuff that he does.
Yeah,
but ultimately we get this like this whole shootout. This is like the one of the best parts of the whole movie. We get Tom Sizemore's character running through a fountain, and he grabs a kid and uses the kid as like a shield because the kid was what parent left their child behind, by the way.
No
but
shit.
That's a different story. And Pacino sees it happening. He's like hiding behind some bushes, like, and he sees Sizemore's character running towards him, and just lines up his sights, takes a shot, one bullet, puts Sizemore down.
Incredible shot. Yeah.
It's a cool shot. That was in the the made for TV version of the movie as well. The exact same shot.
LA Takedown, yeah.
Yeah,
so
it was in that.
Val Kilmer's wounded. He and De Niro get away. Their driver's killed. Ted Levine, one of the police officers, is killed.
Which reminds me, which Heat character are you? Because I felt like lately, I was like, dude, I kind of feel like Ted Levine. I'm feeling Ted Levine vibes lately. Just like he gets shit on by Hannah like the whole movie. He's like, look into this, and it doesn't work out. Like he's like, nothing on the it's too common. Vincent can't pick it up. He's like, fuck.
Explosives.
He just gets hung
He's
up
good
on.
though.
And then he gets fucking. He's like gone within the first like couple shots of the shootout. And it's like creepy too. He's like a great dead dude because he's like eyes are wide open. He's like, yeah.
I read that he asked to be a police officer because everyone has always identified him as Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. He's like, I want to be a good guy.
Yeah.
And that's why he was in this, which is cool, man. I was like, all right, you be one of the detectives.
He's a great actor. He's
awesome.
Actor. He's good in Monk.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys watch Monk ever.
Don't watch it.
All right. But before we move on, let's jump into something fun. Let's call this section Top 5 Best Shootouts in Movies.
This is tough, guys.
Joe, you wrote down a list. Paul, you wrote down a list, right?
I have one, yeah.
Okay, let's set the
Joe,
parameters.
You want to go first?
Well, I want to set the parameters.
Okay, go ahead.
We're not, do we? I left out war movies.
Oh, fair. No war movies on my list.
Paul?
I didn't think of it that way, but I don't have any.
Okay. Man.
I almost asked you guys like a couple questions, but I was like, just keep it open ended and let's see what the lists are. Because it's just like, it's such a. Because I was like, is the drive hotel room scene a shootout? Because I love that scene.
Could be.
And they shoot guns, but it's not like hiding behind and shooting and hiding and shooting and like a long extended thing.
I went for extended scenes.
Yeah, me too, for the most part. I didn't put that down, even though I love it.
Okay.
I think you go from your 5 to 1.
All right.
Yeah. So what's your 5, Joe?
Number 5, Sicario bridge scene.
Oh, that's a good one.
Hot.
That's a super good one.
It's unbelievable. It's not a ton of shooting, but it's very talk about tension ratcheting.
I love how it escalates because it seems so realistic. Like there's just a look and it's gone.
Yep.
The sweat in that one just makes it.
Yeah.
Along with
you can feel it.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, what's his name? Who's the guy with the glasses? He's Jeffrey Donovan. Yeah, he's great.
Burn Notice, man. Yeah.
Burn Notice, yeah. That was my 5. Paul.
What's your 5?
I'm cheating
Paul?
a little bit, but I'm going Carlito's Way. The chase / shootout in the train station.
God damn, Carlito's Way.
Fucking love that movie.
Love it.
All timer.
Lay down. Maybe my favorite Pacino. Greg, what's your number 5?
I got the John Wick home invasion scene.
In 1? John Wick 1?
Yeah, the first one.
Fucking good. Wow.
Yeah, he's running around the house in the kitchen, just murking everybody.
Wow. Okay. Blind
These are
spot for
good
me.
picks. These are great. Yeah, number 4.
4 for me. Wild Bunch. The end of the Wild Bunch.
I haven't seen that.
Oh my god.
It's good. That's my number 3.
Oh shit. It's super bloody. Sam Peckinpah, slow mo. Unbelievable, like incredible hyper violence, especially for when it was made late 60s. Greg, you love westerns. You'd like it.
All right. Paul, what's your number 4?
Professional. The final shootout in The Professional in the apartment
Good
where
one.
he shoots down the like laundry chute thing, and that final send off.
That's a
that
good
final
one.
send off.
I've got a little movie called Hot Fuzz. You're a doctor. Deal with it.
Great scene.
The shootout at the end. It's just crazy.
That movie is so good.
I mean, they hit like all the cliches in that movie. What's not to love?
It's really good.
Yeah. All right, Joe. What's your number 3?
Collateral club scene.
Oh,
Hard. Yeah,
Hard.
Yeah.
Hard. I love the. I like the crate. Like I would never listen to that type of music. That like hyper house techno, but it like fits that like chaotic scene so well. I think it's fucking awesome.
Usually,
I know he does like
that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
go.
No, I was just gonna say that scene, like he's cutting a lot, but I feel like I kind of know where people are again, and it's like not nauseating. He's like doing it masterfully. So
Yep. Mozambique in that one as well, Paul.
we get a few Mozambiques in Collateral.
Oh yeah.
and we know what Paul's number 3 was there.
Wild
So,
Bunch.
yeah. So that brings it to my number 3. That's going to be the Matrix lobby scene.
Sick.
It's very good. Very sick.
I don't think I.
That one's
I don't
good.
think I knew how badass it was when I think I was like floored, but then like you go back and watch it again, and it's like perfect. Like it doesn't look
When they
like
go,
it's
they
so
go through the metal
clean.
detector.
But like even the effects are like they work still. It's really well done. It's awesome.
It's technically like perfect, I think, as
And
well.
it's hilarious when they go through the metal detector.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. What's your number 2?
Hard Boiled, the opening.
That's mine too.
Number 2?
No, mine's not the opening. Mine's the hospital
Yeah,
scene.
I love the hospital too, but I figured it was too long. It's like 45 minutes. It's fucking awesome. But I was like, that's really long.
Yeah.
I like the opening in the tea house a lot. When he's got both guns.
Yeah.
He
Hard boiled for both of us. That's interesting.
We probably should do that. That movie fucking rules.
Yeah. Paul, what's your number 2?
Unforgiven.
Oh,
Final scene in Unforgiven.
That's really good.
That's a good one.
He should have armed himself.
I
He's
always
gonna
like how
decorate.
everybody's like the guns don't go off and they're scared and half the dudes run and they can't hit him and he's just like
He has to
popping
throw.
them.
He throws it. That's really good.
All right, Joe, number 1.
My number 1 was Heat, the bank robbery. I know that.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt it would be like a little bit like, what are you trying to zag or what?
Yeah.
To like
Is
not
that your number
picky.
1 too, Paul?
Yeah.
It's number 1.
Oh, wow.
Holy shit. All 3 of us picked
Unanimous.
it. Yeah. It's number 1.
I stayed out of this one, but I have a number 1.
Okay.
Oh.
You'll never guess what it is.
Is it the Heat bank robbery?
No. There's a small scene in this movie called Fast Five.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's it's when The Rock, is Dominic Toretto's greatest foe. He's the enemy to the Toretto family,
Mhm.
and they have a shootout in that movie. I recommend it to everybody.
Fast Five's a good one, man.
It is
I
good.
can't.
It is one of the.
I can't keep him straight. You guys have any like crazy honorable mentions? I have 2.
Yeah, what do you got?
The Killer, another John Woo. The church shooting at the end, I think, is like ridiculously awesome. And then the other one is Open Range. I don't know if you guys have
I
seen
had
it.
open range on mine.
Honorable.
On my honorable mention list.
So good.
My honorable mention list had The Town, and then also the shootout and Face Off.
Which one?
The end. Yeah.
The speedboat and the spear gun.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's good stuff.
That's good.
John Woo, man.
John Woo again. He's a master.
He is.
My list is Point Break. I think the house shootout, Scarface.
Oh hell
the
yeah!
final shootout, and that's pretty legendary. True Romance. The
Oh
hotel.
yeah.
That one was good because that was like a 3-way standoff. That one is man, that one slipped through the cracks.
Just like
for me.
Reservoir Dogs, which is the same thing in another Tarantino.
Yeah.
All right, and then there's this director I like called Jeremy. His name's Jeremy Saulnier, and he did this movie called Hold the Dark. It's on Netflix, and the movie's like totally average, but there's a shootout scene in it that's super sick. It's like almost worth seeing the movie, but you could probably just watch the shootout scene on YouTube. There's a clip.
Dude,
of it.
have you this new Rebel Ridge movie that he just got released today?
Is it out on Netflix now?
Today.
I'm gonna watch it. Yeah,
I'm probably watching it like tonight or tomorrow morning. I can't wait.
He did Blue Ruin,
awesome.
which if you
Green
ever do
Room.
Blue Ruin, I'd come back if
We'll
you'd
do
have
it.
me.
We'll do it. Greg,
all right,
that was a good segue. Good idea.
Let's back to the movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're basically like things are falling apart now.
Yeah, there's basically De Niro's trying to figure out like what happened, who wasn't there at the like how did the cops catch on to them, who wasn't there, and they're like
Trejo.
I'm gonna go visit Trejo.
Yeah.
Danny Trejo's name in the movie's Trejo. We're just gonna go visit him. And he shows up there to visit him, and he finds his wife dead on the floor. And then we find Trejo basically on like his last breath
Poor
in a
bastard.
pool of blood.
I mean, look,
Yeah.
let's talk him for 5 seconds here. What's he going to do? Like, I get it. He's going to dime out his team. They're torturing his wife. Like, yeah.
Right, I don't think like Neil's. I think Neil's like just like this sucks. Like shit.
Yeah.
Shit situation. Wayne Grove's a piece of
Right.
shit, and I'm pissed.
Right.
But like he ends up like finishing the job for him, which I
That
think is like in a
scene is
weird
awesome.
way is kind of like a sign of respect in an
Oh,
odd way.
for sure.
It's kind of cool.
That's another awesome transition where he's like, "Don't leave me like this, Neil," and he does you can tell he's going to shoot him, and it pulls out to Trejo's house, which is like a stilted house in California on a cliff, and you hear and see the flash of the gunshot, which I thought was awesome. Second favorite transition.
Classy.
Hey, the people that bought that house saw the movie and they realized that they were the ones that owned the house that they didn't realize was in the movie, and they pulled the carpet up where Trejo had been fake killed, and there was still a stain of blood there.
Get the fuck out of here,
like
Greg.
from the dye.
How'd
they
you
used.
find that?
Yeah, it's online.
Look at you, man. That's a good pull. Whoa.
That's fucking podcasting right there.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Before we move past Trejo, I have one last thing to say about him. All respect to him. There's a car that he uses. It shows up multiple times in this movie, but it's a blue '66 Camino. That's actually his Camino. Apparently, he does this a lot in his movies, where he has his daily drivers and cars that he just fixes up because he's a car guy. So he brings them onto set, and they just have them. So that Camino is and you'll see it in the movie maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And I like to think that outfit is how he dresses on the reg, because I just love it, and I wish I could like pull that off. It's like the unzipped fleece like pullover with the hoodie on the back, and then sweatpants, and I think he had loafers on.
No shirt.
God, he's like, it just looks so comfy.
Yeah.
So like like it's a little chilly in LA, comfy.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, you know what, Paul? It's not too late for you to give that a shot. Just go for it,
I don't know
man.
if I could pull off the open chest thing. I feel it's like super aggressive, like an aggressive thing to do, like just have your chest out like that.
So Trejo basically tells him that it was Waingro, and so now we know that we've got De Niro, who's like ready to go after Waingro, but he's got this moral dilemma. Do I dip out? Do I go after Waingro? What's the deal here? On the flip side, Pacino is he basically goes home and he finds his wife has openly cheated on him. There's like some dude in his apartment.
Great.
And
Ralph.
Ralph, yeah. And he's like, I didn't know that she was married, and he's about to get up, and Pacino's like, sit down.
Sit down.
And he gets mad. He's like, "You can come to my house.
Stop.
You can fuck my wife, but I'll tell you what you can't do. You can't watch my TV set." He grabs a TV and takes off with it.
Yeah, the kitchen TV.
Yeah,
you
the
get a
little
lot
TV.
of.
He ends up. He kicks that TV out of his car later, like he's at a red light, and he opens the door and punts the TV out. And there's like a homeless man that was sitting there watching. Apparently, that guy was an actual homeless man. Michael Mann gave him a job for the movie for that specific role,
Holy shit!
to just be an extra. So he got a paycheck to just hang out there and watch Pacino like kick the TV
It's
out.
funny because he looks over at the TV and the TV being there pisses him off, so he just opens the door, kicks it out.
Yeah,
but you're right, Greg. He's gonna use Waingro. He's gonna like let it out on the street that Waingro is at this hotel because he knows now that Neil will want to get Waingro.
Yeah, so he puts it out, like lets every rat in the street know, hey, we need Neil to find out that Waingro is at this hotel.
And it gets back to him. Yeah,
It's
cut to
John,
Nate.
cut to John Voight. Every rat in town is like John Voight with his like Fu Manchu and mullet.
Yeah,
doesn't turn his neck one time in the movie, which is like a
Polo
good character
tie.
decision. He's always like, yeah.
We get the Batman helmet on.
He's like, I know where your guy is. He's under Jameson at the Hotel
Jameson.
Ritz or whatever.
Yeah.
We get a scene of Pacino basically tying up this plot point where he goes home to his apartment and he finds Natalie Portman, his stepdaughter, who's attempted suicide in his bathtub. And he rushes her to the hospital, and the mom makes it there.
Superfluous.
And basically, yeah, it
We don't need this.
seems unneeded.
No,
Yeah.
we don't need it. The only thing I could say is that I think it's kind of like the Waingro. He's adding color here, I guess, maybe showing like his life.
He's
is
a good guy. We
completely
get it.
chaotic. Yeah, he's a good guy and his life's chaotic. But it's like you could shave this, you could shave some stuff here. I don't hate it. It does like help with the buildup, I think, a little bit, because you're like, he's just all over the place trying to get, he's not sleeping. He's trying to catch this guy. His poor stepdaughter's distraught, try to kill herself.
It does bring up a valid question, which I think is like, look, is this movie better if it's 2 hours and 10 minutes long instead of 2 hours and 50 minutes long? Like, is it a better movie overall? And I think yes. And that's why I kind of like give the nod to Thief a little bit. But like, it's like a guilty pleasure kind of thing, like soap operas. I kind of don't want it to be cut now that it's there, So I don't know. It's like a credit to it. It's like, how is this 2 hours and 50 minutes still entertaining throughout the whole thing? Yeah, it'd be better, but I still like it.
The first thing I noted was how most movies nowadays, they'll do the big shootout scene, and then that's the conclusion. That's the climax.
Correct.
I think I was probably like 20 minutes in post shootout where I was like, oh shit, this is really cool. I like that I checked it. I was like, there's 40 minutes left in this movie. How? But I loved it. Not a lot of movies do that now, I think.
Yeah, they could have gone the cheap route and just closed out right there.
The bank could have been
didn't.
the closing, yeah.
And that's a good point because I've gotten numb to that. But it is unique that the movie just kind of does have like a kind of unique structure to it. Like it just keeps kind of going and in an interesting way, not like this won't get over. It's like interesting.
Give us closure.
Yeah.
Well, now we get De Niro and Pacino are both going to converge on this hotel where Waingro is hiding out. Because De Niro knows he's there and he needs to kill him, and Pacino knows that De Niro's going there to kill Waingro. I do like this a lot.
Theory here.
Oh, go ahead.
That De Niro goes to kill Waingro as a favor to Pacino because
he knows he's a serial killer.
When they met at the diner, because he was a serial killer, yeah, and Pacino talks about all the dead bodies of people he couldn't save.
Interesting. I thought it was more of like he's just a code guy.
Yeah.
And this is like, this guy screwed my team over, got my friends killed, betrayed me. And I also had the opportunity to correct this early on when he was in the parking lot, and I screwed it up. So I got to atone for this.
Right. So he goes to the hotel. He goes in through the back door, as he always does. It's like De Niro doesn't use front doors in any of these situations. He's in the back door of the kitchen. He's in the back door recruiting a driver. He's in the back door of the hotel. I mean, the guy, he just walks. He goes wherever he wants.
Well, he takes that. He puts that security blazer on. The scene when he disarms that guy is awesome. You know,
you're talking about
before.
Oh,
before he has the flashlight, and the guy's like, "Hold it." It's a policeman, and he backs up until the gun touches him, so he knows where the gun is, and then he turns around with the flashlight and knocks it out of the way. It was like really. I thought that was very.
He's
smart.
got a mag light he's holding. Yeah. Those were batons in the 90s
for sure
at all concert venues
and police officers.
Yeah.
He also doesn't show his face in the peephole because he knows where Winger is, and he's just facing out. Like, come on, he's pulled the fire alarm, so people are emptying out of the hotel, and he's like, everyone, he's like doing this thing where he's kind of ushering people out with his arm. And so when Winger looks out, he's like, oh, it's a security guy. But he's like, I can't come out, man. I can't come out. And that's when he's like, let's just talk about this or whatever. And then De Niro kicks the door in. Great stuff.
Kicks the door in. Waingro falls backwards on the couch. De Niro tells him to look at him. And then he puts him to rest.
It's one of the better assassinations. The Mozambique technique. So there's 2 in the chest, 1 in the head. And then Mann does this really macabre zoom out where it's Wayne Gross sitting back. It's an amazing shot, but you feel guilty for liking it because it's really dark because it's a dude that's been shot twice in the chest. And also the way Wayne Gross dies is one of the most brutal deaths. He gets shot twice in the chest and is gasping for air. It's and then he puts 1 in the head and he's look me in the eyes. It's oh man, this is dark and really vengeful. And I guess you would be mad when people die that you care about.
Did you notice that he didn't look at him at first? He's like, look at me. And he kind of looks away. He's like, look at me.
And then he gets scared. It's really there's so much nuance to it that makes it better than just a throwaway killing in a movie.
It's super satisfying though, knowing that he is a serial killer to me. It helps. Maybe this is why they did it. All the stuff you're saying, Paul, is right. It's super dark. I mean, we're watching a murder. It's pretty terrible. But then we flash back to him killing that child prostitute. I'm like, oh, this wasn't even that. I wish he got worse. This wasn't even that bad.
Right.
I mean, I would have felt that way with the guy, him just killing the guard in the first place alone.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We get De Niro exiting the hotel, and there's people everywhere. Pacino lands there in a helicopter, and he's running up. And as Pacino's running up, he sees a girl sitting in a car by herself, and he remembers De Niro saying that he had a girl, and so he knows that this is probably her. He connects the dots. De Niro's walking out, and he makes eye contact with his girlfriend in the car. And he's walking over towards her. And as he's walking over towards her, he looks over to the side to his right, and he sees Pacino clock him. And in that moment, you see him pause. And you see this whole conflict and dilemma in front of him. Because this is the girl he wanted, and now he's got to dip out because he sees heat coming around the corner. Once again,
and he's broken his code already. He's broken his code the whole time.
It's the biggest criticism, but also kind of the crux of the movie.
Yeah,
it's Neil totally is pitched as the most disciplined man in the history of the world, and then he just kind of frays apart at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He breaks every rule that he set. And
he should have not killed Waingro. They should have just left.
He shouldn't be into Edie that much.
Yep,
all that stuff.
Instead, he sees this girl and he's like, "Them's the breaks, ho!" And he dips out.
He runs, and then you get the chase scene through LAX, which is crazy.
I got to say this: how easy was it to get on the tarmac on LAX in the 90s?
Dude, Mann talked about that after 9/11. He's like, we could never film. He's like, it was really hard to film at LAX anyway, and now we could never film there.
To be honest, the 30th time you watch this scene takes forever.
It takes. They're running for so long.
It's cool and it's artistic, and I'm not gonna say it's not a really cool ending scene, but you're holy shit, dude. I'm wow, they must have Pacino's running, they're running for a while,
and he's carrying the shotgun, so he's like,
yeah.
Okay, there's something really cool that happens in this scene though. We get like we said, it's artistic, but we get a really cool viewpoint of De Niro, the layout of where he's hiding. Then we get the viewpoint of Pacino, which is basically the whole movie back and forth. But now it's coming to the culmination, the head where they're going to meet in this situation, and we get their perspective. And so we know where De Niro is in hiding on this airport, like behind some I don't even know what they are, like little buildings.
Yeah.
And we know where he's going to pop out for De Niro, which is really cool because like other movies don't really do that. We know that like someone's hiding, but we don't know exactly where they're hiding. In this one, we get all the schematics. There's attention to detail here, which is, in my opinion, I thought this was really cool. And up to this point, the first time I watched this, I still didn't know if this was a De Niro or a Pacino movie. I didn't know who was going to be victorious here. I was like, this is crazy, all the way to the very end. So Pacino's standing there, and there's a plane landing. When the plane lands, we get some lights flash, and right then De Niro pops out, and Pacino sees the shadow from the lights, turns, shoots him. De Niro falls back, and he doesn't finish him off. He kind of lays there for a second. And they kind of have a moment, a little bromance.
They get the bro handshake.
Do you know why Pacino saw him that quickly in the light? Because he hangs on to that angst. He's on the razor edge. He's sharp.
Keeps me sharp.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
You get a little, these two guys are like connected, right?
And it's like cokey and corny, but also like kind of cool. Like, I mean, honestly, I kind of think it's cool.
I think it's cool.
I mean, you could choose to look at it that way, but you know, I think that's the one thing the diner scene really sets up and gives that some credibility. Without it, it's like that, you know, you wouldn't really have that.
Yeah.
Just guys being dudes, honestly.
For sure.
Dudes being dudes.
I mean, that's our plot. That's our movie.
That's the movie in a nutshell. Overall, I give this movie 5 stars.
This is definitely a 5-star. What's the best line in the movie? Mark, your favorite line. Any actor it can be said from any actor.
I'm a softie, man. So, and this might be reaching, and I didn't want to. I've been questioning reaching this far, but I think when there's a scene where Kilmer and De Niro are talking about his girlfriend. Yeah, man. Kilmer, De Niro's like, you know, like why wouldn't you be able to leave her? Or like why do you choose to stay with her? And he says the sun rises and sunsets with her, man. And I was like, damn it. I like pounded my desk. I was all shit.
And then at the same time, Neil's like, fuck, this guy's a loser. He's like, I'm gonna have to go pay this bitch to get this heist done so I can get the fuck over to New Zealand.
That's right. He's like, God
you
damn,
can see it in
man.
his face. Like he's like disappointed. He really is.
Yeah. Because he's like, I got a code, but then he's the sucker later because he breaks the code, the same code that he's chastising Kilmer for. Paul.
Kind of. He kind of follows it. He runs, but then
Until
he had broke it. Like the wing growth. I don't know. He's a mess at the end for sure.
Too late. Yeah. Greg, what's your favorite line?
When De Niro meets his girlfriend in the bar and she starts asking him a ton of questions, and he goes, "Lady, why are you so interested in what kind of work I do?"
That's good. Paul?
Shoe in Pelican Bay, New Folsom B Wing. I am a cowboy looking for anything heavy. That is why I'm here.
That's pretty good.
That was good.
I don't even know what my favorite line is.
Real like prisons that are like scary places.
Oh yeah, both of those places. Yeah. Maximum security. I do. I mean, there's like good lines, but then there's like good deliveries. When he's walking after they interview Tim Hardaway and he's walking out, he's like, "Don't waste my motherfucking time." I do like that a lot.
That's so
it's good.
Yeah, that was my second one. Yeah. That one's up there.
I like that one.
Are you
what
saying
else?
he's a Tim Hardaway doppelganger?
Dude, I every time I see that guy, I'm like, is that Tim Hardaway from the Golden State Warriors?
Dude, by the way, fucking Tone Loc just throws me for a loop every time.
He's good. He's good though.
I don't hate it, but it's just like Tone
It's kind of weird that he's in it because you're like, he's not like a real street rapper. He's like a pop rapper.
In that in that scene with Tone Loc, there's House of Pain, and this is like the first time House of
Terrible.
Pain's been in a movie
Yeah.
that it's not jump around.
And it's clear that that's not the music that's being played to me.
Yeah.
That's not the song that people are dancing to.
You don't dance to that song.
Yeah, no shit. Nobody. The only House of Pain song is Jump Around anyway. Tone Loc to me is like, why didn't they get like Tupac or something? A guy who's a little harder, but he's good. I thought he was pretty good. He has one scene. I liked him.
Tone Loc, that was his peak.
Yeah. Funky Cold Medina.
Joe,
yeah.
Let's talk about the characters and the little piece we call Jiu-Jitsu
Yeah,
Corner.
welcome to Jiu-Jitsu Corner. This is a thing we talk about a lot, and we've only started doing it. We've talked about it like the last couple podcasts after we do it, and we're like, oh, we didn't do it. And I believe Aliens was the first one we did it, right, Greg?
Yep.
So if you're not into jiu-jitsu, you can fast forward this part, but if you are, you probably will enjoy this. Basically what we do here is we talk about the main characters and what kind of like jiu-jitsu style they would employ based on their personality traits, their character flaws, things like that. Greg, so I think, who do we talk? We're talking De Niro, obviously De Niro, Pacino, Sizemore, Kilmer. Is that it? Do we have Waingro?
Yeah.
Anybody got a Waingro?
No. Let's just do the other guys.
So let's start with De Niro. What's your take, Craig?
My take being, like, what his jiu-jitsu style would be? I think that De Niro is probably very meticulous. He's probably a guard passer. He's top heavy.
Wow.
He's real annoying to deal with.
Okay. Paul, how do you feel about De Niro's character, Neil?
He's an MMA style top player, a lot of neon belly, guillotines and arm bars, singles and doubles standing up.
Damn. That's I went the total opposite way. I think he's an efficient guard player who wants to conserve energy and plays half guard.
Okay.
Someone like a raging bull.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I say we say Pacino for last. How about Sizemore?
Sizemore gasses out really fast. He's good for the first 30 seconds, and he's strong as shit for those 30 seconds. But if you can last past that, you're taking his back, you're choking him, you're doing whatever you want. He's wheezing.
Paul?
Top only, stands up ASAP from guard, hunts Americanas and Kimuras, and he just does singles and stalls when he's standing up.
That's
He'll
the
eat
same
up half-
guy.
he'll eat up
Yes.
half the round just like fucking standing there.
That's exactly what I
He ain't
thought.
pulling. He ain't pulling guard.
No, but he wants to get to side control and do an Americana. Lay on you. That's exactly what I thought.
Or get in half guard and do a Kimura.
Yeah. Val. I think Val is like a aggressive passer, outside passing.
No, I think Val likes to do all the flashy moves, and then he pays for it when they don't work.
So you think he's bad?
No, I think he strikes gold every now and then, but I think for the most part, he's trying to do like reverse inverted barambolos.
Oh wow!
And then they're just not working for him.
Paul,
physically gifted, skilled, open guard, multiple attacks, wrestling takedown game, inconsistent trainer, out of shape. But he can beat a lot of dudes in the gym.
That's true.
It's like fucking comes in hungover as shit. Val Kilmer looks like shit this whole movie. It's like that dude that
Paul's
smells like
got
booze.
so much backstory to their jujitsu that we didn't expect or
Yes.
account for.
I don't know if I'm going too hard in the paint here, but I was just like, I'm taking it seriously.
Dude, that's so true though. He is like always hungover. He's late. You're right. I thought of him as like a headquarters passer because he is technical, but you're right. He has like major flaws in his personality that lead him to not being very successful. I mean, Pacino's the last one. Greg, Pacino.
I think that Pacino's overly aggressive, and if I'm taking Paul's route, he's got a lot of aggression, and it depends on if he's had sex that morning or not, or if he's had cocaine, because those definitely impact what his game's going to be like.
Paul.
He favors the top, a lot of head and arm chokes. He likes to get to the back when he's on bottom, rear naked, and a lot of trips and throws standing up.
Okay. I thought similar. I thought that he was like the guy who accidentally elbows you a lot. It's like, sorry. You're like, yeah, I know, man.
You're
Stop saying sorry.
constantly
Just
catching
don't do
stray
it.
elbows
Yeah.
from
All
him.
Stop
right,
elbowing
but hold
me.
on. We got to do Van Zant. He's the blue belt that's working flying arm bars and asks a lot of like abrasive questions in class. It's like, could it be possible for me to do the arm bar with this at leverage point here? Like, dude, just fucking do the technique the coach is teaching and shut the hell up. That's Van Zant.
That's good.
Oh, I love it. That's so
That is
good.
good. Any final jujitsu thoughts that we should apply to this movie, Greg?
I can't believe we didn't do Trejo either.
Dude, Trejo is like
Baron Bolo, dude.
Yeah, he's a bolo guy.
Yeah, he's small. He's gonna get underneath you.
Yeah,
For
Kiss of the
sure.
Dragon, bolo stuff. He's probably the best of all these guys. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and I think in real life he'd probably work him, but
Yeah, I mean, I think he was a lightweight champion, boxing champion of San Quentin.
That says a lot.
Yeah. Any final jujitsu corner thoughts, Greg?
No, I think that's it, man. Yeah. What's any final thoughts on Heat?
I mean, Heat doesn't fall into one of our categories, which is unfortunate, but that's because it's too good. So I'd say to wrap up, I don't know anyone who hasn't seen this, but if you haven't, you must watch it. It's the blueprint for literally every crime movie, most likely from 1995 to now. So elements of most of those movies are present in this movie. Paul, what are your final thoughts here?
yeah, I mean, I think it's like I think it's almost like so well watched and reviewed, like that it's almost underappreciated now, and some of the things that you think, like it set the staple or set the set the mold for are being used in movies over and over, and it can kind of like come back and look like it's tropey, and it actually came up with a lot of this stuff. I
Yeah.
think the parallel cop and robber and seeing both sides of that has never been as well done as it is in this movie, and it's really like a captivating part of it. It's like a huge selling point, and the fact that it's De Niro and Pacino just keeps it in one of those like upper echelon movies. It'll always be in my top 25, fluctuating anywhere from like 10 to 20 or something, like it's just and it's one of those movies that you think, I've seen this 1,000 times, but it still is engaging when you watch it, which is impressive considering it's almost 3 hours long.
Mark?
I give this, I'll say it's one word. It's timeless. It doesn't feel aged besides the cars and maybe some of the guns,
great,
but
great.
as far as I don't know, script, it's up there. It's smart and it's to the point. It doesn't rely on just action, and man just really shows that he can build a character and he can build a cast. And this is I'm thankful that we were able to watch this movie, because it's probably in my top 15 now. Like I want to find the 4K if there's a 4K, and I want to own this movie now.
Awesome.
It's good.
That's a great point. I thought that exact same thing today, that besides the cars and the cell phones, if you put this out in theaters today, it would be seamless. You're totally right. Great point.
Yeah.
The car phone.
The car phone, yeah. Greg, what's next week?
Oh man. So we're kicking off October with a classic, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah, we got to do something
starring
scary.
Kurt Russell. This is one of Joe's favorite movies.
Yeah, by one of my favorite directors. I think Carpenter's in my top 5 for sure. Mann is too, probably. Yeah, he is. Carpenter, definitely. This movie's so great. I can't wait to do it. And it's going to be good for it to come out when it's kind of like cold and takes place in Antarctica. It's like a scary movie. Good Halloween flick.
I'm in Texas. It's not cold.
I'm buying all of us parkas so we can wear them.
Perfect.
To really fit the vibe of The Thing.
I'm trying to grow my beard as long as I can for the Kurt Russell comparison. I don't think it's going to get there, but we'll see.
We got time.
The Primecut Podcast at gmail.com, Prime_Cut_podcast on Instagram, Primecut Podcast on YouTube and TikTok. Look out for videos, clips, some breakdown stuff. Mark has been killing it with that. Greg has been disseminating those as Mark puts them together, and Greg is putting them together. So that has been great work. Paul, it's such a pleasure. We love having you. Anytime, for whatever reason, you want to come back and drop in with us, we would welcome it. It's so nice to have you, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Love the pod.
Team, that's it. See you next week.